I'm a 48-year-old deer hunter from northern Minnesota. I've been doing this since I was big enough to sit in a stand without falling out. I've spent more hours in the woods than I could ever count, and I always kind of thought I had a good read on what goes on out there. Most of us probably do. But after November of 2021, I don't say that anymore. I hunt a chunk of public land not far from Eli, way up north. It's swamp and pine and blowdowns. It's a place where a good buck can disappear 10 feet from you and you'll never see him. I've had good luck there over the years, mostly because I figured out a funnel where deer cross from the swamp into the hardwoods. You sit that spot during rifle season and eventually something moves through. It's a reliable spot, as reliable as it gets. I'll paint the picture. It was rifle season. I was in my stand well before sunrise. It was cold, but it wasn't miserable. Maybe 18 degrees. Snow on the ground, just enough crust on it that you hear everything coming from a mile away. There wasn't a breath of wind. About an hour after first light, I started hearing deer moving in the swamp behind me. They were moving pretty steady, not running, thankfully. And that honestly didn't make sense because deer around there don't head into the open hardwoods unless something bumped them up or spooked them. I got my rifle ready and looked down the trail. Then I heard something else. Something behind the deer, something large. It wasn't crashing through the brush like a bear, it was more like it was pacing the deer, or herding them. That's the best word for it. It wasn't trying to catch them, it was just pushing them in the direction it wanted them to go. It was driving them. My first thought was it had to be wolves, but wolves move light. These steps were heavy enough to vibrate through the metal of my tree stand. The deer came through in a tight little group. 2 does, a smaller buck behind them. They were funneling like they always do, but they were nervous in a way I wasn't expecting. Their heads kept turning the wrong direction, like whatever was behind them wasn't close, but they knew it was there. I brought my scope up and tried to spot what was pushing them, but all I saw were shadows. Then I heard something off to my left in the hardwoods. A branch snapped. A deliberate one. This wasn't a deer. Definitely not a squirrel. Something stepped out just inside the tree line, maybe 60, 70 yards from me. And I froze, because it wasn't a deer or a wolf or a bear. It was standing on 2 legs. I didn't get a direct, straight shot, clear look at its face because it was angled away from me watching the deer. But the shape of it, the size of it, I damn near dropped my rifle. This thing was huge. Its shoulders were as wide as a big man, but a lot thicker. Like it had more muscle than anything that should exist in this woods especially. Fur completely covering all over it. It had long arms that I can't even describe. The head, it was definitely canine, no doubt. It was shaped just like a dog or a wolf. It was also more narrow and a lot bigger, of course, and set on top of the shoulders like a linebacker. This thing didn't even have a neck. It was panting, like it had been chasing the deer, which makes sense, I suppose. It was standing there perfectly still at that point, like it was waiting for its opportunity. That's when it hit me. There were 2 more of these things. The one behind the deer was pushing them forward, and this one was waiting in the funnel, exactly where a smart hunter would put himself. I'm telling you right now, that thing wasn't guessing. It knew the terrain. It knew the deer were coming to it. It had positioned itself for the kill, like it had done this 100 times before. My breathing just went to hell. I couldn't even steady my gun. I wasn't going to shoot it anyway because I didn't know if my 30-06 would even matter to something this big. I didn't know what the hell I was even looking at. The deer came through right where they always do. The first doe passed the spot where that thing was standing, and the second she cleared by maybe 10 feet. The creature moved. It wasn't really fast like sprinting, it was fast like dropping the clutch on a car. 1 second it was still, the next it crossed that distance between it and the deer in one jump. It hit the smaller buck from the side and everything went silent. Not even a bleat. Nothing. It was dead before it even hit the ground. The other deer blew out of there so fast they didn't even make noise, just vanished. The creature bent over that buck, grabbed it by the neck and lifted it off the ground like it weighed nothing. And then this is the part that makes me sick. It looked toward the woods behind the deer like it was signaling the other one. I didn't hear the second one. I didn't see it. But I knew it was there. I could feel it. The first one dragged the buck into the trees like it was nothing more than a bag of leaves, and the woods stayed dead quiet. I sat there for almost an hour without moving. I was scared to even breathe. Finally, I climbed down and got the hell out of there. I walked backwards most of the way because I didn't want to turn my back on anything, especially after what I'd just seen. I haven't been back to that spot. I won't go back there. I didn't tell a single person except my brother, and even he looked at me like I'd lost it. I don't know if I can ever hunt again, to be honest, but I do know this. These dogman creatures, those deer, they weren't just being chased, they were being run through a plan, a coordinated plan, a strategy, if you will. Now, what's stopping these things from using this intelligence and this strategy on us? That wasn't an animal chasing something for food. That was an apex intelligent predator using teamwork, terrain, and timing better than any human hunter I've ever met. I will never, as long as I live, forget the way that thing moved. J.G. Eli, Minnesota. Hey, brother. You or anyone else can believe this or not. Really doesn't make a big difference to me. I'm only sending this because my cousin keeps telling me I should get it off my chest, whatever that means. He listens to your channel every night while he works on cars, so if you're reading this, blame him. I do a lot of hog hunting down here in East Texas. Not for fun, more like necessity. They tear up land like nothing else, and the landowner likes when people thin them out a bit. Me and my cousin run thermals because that's the only real way to hunt hogs at night without sitting there blind. Anyway, this happened last summer. It was hot as hell, humid enough that my shirt stayed glued to me the entire time. We'd been watching a group of hogs hitting this spot near a dried-out creek bed. The landowner had thrown corn down for a few days to keep them coming in. Pretty normal stuff, really. We got set up around 10 p.m. There was no moon to speak of. The thermals lit up everything like a video game. We were on opposite sides of a little opening, maybe 40 yards apart, whispering back and forth about which one we wanted to take. At first, everything was exactly like it always is. Hogs rooting, a few small boars pushing each other, one big sow that kept checking the wind. Typical hog behavior. Then something changed. Something that I didn't know was coming. I couldn't have ever imagined this was coming. The hogs all lifted their heads at the exact same time, not a second apart. I mean, the same second, like somebody hit a switch. They weren't looking at us. They weren't looking downwind. They were looking at this dark tree line behind them, and the way they were staring. It wasn't, we smell something. It was, we know something awful is in there. My cousin whispered, "You see anything?" I didn't. I just saw black and trees. No heat signatures, no movement. Then the thermal finally picked something up way off on the right side. One big heat blob, moving slowly, real slowly. It wasn't sneaking, it was just moving around like it was waiting. But there's something, this part, I can't get out of my head. It moved in a circle, a perfect one. It wasn't weaving, not nosing the ground like a hog. It was not pacing like a coyote. It was a slow, wide, intentional circle around these hogs, always staying just outside of their line of sight. I knew at that moment whatever this was very smart, and it knew very well what it was doing. This was something skilled in hunting. But, come to find out, it was even smarter than I thought. This thing circled again and got behind them. I could see it clear now, and I swear to God it was big. Like, big. The kind of heat signature you only see with cattle, or a full-grown black bear, maybe. Only this wasn't shaped like either of those. It had a long torso. It was tall, upright when it paused, huge upper body. Then it dropped down low, almost crawling. The heat signature showed long arms, long legs, longer than anything I've seen move on four limbs. My cousin whispered, "Buddy, that's not a hog. That ain't anything." We watched it move from one side to the other without making a single sound. Not even a grunt or a breath. This thing was hurting these hogs. That's the only word I've got for it, because that's what it was doing. Every time the hogs shifted, it shifted to cut them off. It kept them inside this little circle like it was pushing cattle. The hogs were panicking, understandably, but not running. Every time one tried to break, that thing would appear on that side and block the escape. Then, it came in fast. And no, I've heard other people say they run like a man. This wasn't like that. One instant it was 20 yards from the hogs, and the next it was right there on top of them. It was a blur. My thermal could barely keep up. It hit a medium-sized boar first. Not the biggest one, not the smallest. It knew which one was easiest to separate. It dragged it down like it just weighed 5 or 10 pounds. The rest of the hogs exploded out in every direction. I mean full sprint, crashing through the woods so loud that it echoed. My cousin started cussing under his breath, and I told him to shut up because whatever that thing was, it wasn't focused on us. We watched it finish the boar in 2 seconds flat. Then, it stood up on 2 legs, full height, shoulders hunched, head shaped like a wolf, ears up like a damn dog. It sniffed the air, just checking. Then it walked backward into the trees with the boar over its shoulder, just calm as a cucumber, like it had been doing this its entire life, like this was completely normal. Nothing about this was normal. Me and my cousin sat there another 30 minutes trying to figure out if we should walk or crawl out of there. We chose walking, but we walked slow and kept looking over our shoulders and kept the thermals on the whole time. Now, I've been hunting these woods since I was a kid. I know hogs, I know coyotes, I know the occasional black bear. Nothing out here circles prey like that. Nothing out here pushes animals like it knows the bigger picture of how to corner them. People say hogs are smart, and they are. But whatever that thing was, it was hunting smart. And I know how crazy this sounds, but when I got home I realized something else. It had to know we were there. It didn't care about us at all, not even a little. We were just 2 idiots watching something we weren't supposed to see. That's all I have. Believe it or don't. C.W., Jasper County. Hello. I'm 56 years old, and I've spent half my life in the mountains around western Montana. I'm not, and make no mistake, I want you to understand, I'm not the type to lose sleep over something I can't explain. I've seen my share of weird things in the woods, and I don't usually pay any mind to it. I'm writing this to you because what I saw was wrong, and I'm old enough to know the difference between something strange and something that's impossible. This was closer to the latter. This happened in 2019. I was hunting a drainage above the Bitterroot Valley, a place I've taken elk from over the years. It's very steep country, deadfall everywhere, little pockets of lodgepole, then wide open bowls where the elk like to feed in the evenings. It's hard walking, but that's why I hunt it. It keeps 90% of people out. A lot of people are lazy and don't like to work for their hunt. Right around 4 p.m., I spotted a herd way down in a bowl. Maybe 40, 50 elk. Cows, calves, one decent bull pushing them around. They were acting normal at first. Grazing, switching sides, looking around. What you would expect. Then the whole herd shifted like something spooked them. I knew it wasn't me. They didn't run, they just bunched up tighter, and several cows kept staring at the same line of trees on the far side of the bowl. You spend enough time glassing elk, you start picking up on the subtle stuff. They weren't alarmed, but they were uncomfortable. I scanned the trees. I didn't see anything obvious. I didn't see a wolf, a cat. I didn't see another hunter. There was nothing there that I could see. About 5 minutes passed, and I finally saw some movement. It was something big, and it was something low. It looked like a wolf, but was too big to be a wolf, and it was too low to the ground to be a bear. It was moving through the deadfall like it had rehearsed the route. It didn't fight the timber, it weaved through it like a needle with thread. I don't know how else I could say that, but just picture it in your mind and you may understand. Every time the elk looked away, this thing moved. When their heads came back up, it froze. Like it understood how vision works. I thought I was watching a mountain lion at first, but lions don't move the way this thing did. And it was too big, too long at the torso. The head was that of a dog. I could see it perfectly. The ears were higher, its muzzle was longer. Its arms and legs were extremely long and extremely skinny. It didn't look physically possible. This looked like something out of a movie. It got worse because I watched it stand up. It was standing just enough to look over the deadfall. A very quick rise, maybe a second or two. It was standing on two legs. I saw it. Very tall, very lean. Dog-shaped head, as I said before. It had shoulders like a man who spends his life swinging an axe. It was the awareness that got me. This thing checked the wind. It checked all the exits. It checked the spacing of the elk. It was calculating the same way I would if I were planning to stalk on a herd. Only it was doing better than I would. It slipped back down low and moved left, cutting off the drainage that the elk would naturally run through if they took off. It wasn't hurting them, it was not rushing them, it was shaping the situation, controlling the geometry of the bowl. The bull kept bulging half-heartedly, but even he looked bothered like he knew something big was off. The creature waited until the elk shifted again, then it made its move. It closed 50 yards, like smoke. I heard nothing. This was silent, smooth. If I hadn't been watching through glass, I would have missed it. It targeted a cow at the back of the herd, the slowest one, the one lagging behind the rest. Now you know predators do that, yeah, but this was not opportunistic. It looked intentional, like it had reviewed the entire herd and picked the one with the lowest chance of escaping. That was intelligence. The attack happened so fast I had to replay it in my mind afterward just to convince myself that I actually saw it. That poor elk didn't even have time to even think about moving before that thing was on her. It came from behind and slightly above, using the slope to its advantage. I heard one short cry and then it went quiet. The rest of the herd were gone, dust and snow flying everywhere. The bull was the first one out. Typical. Down on the ground, I could see just enough to know the cow was dead almost instantly. The creature didn't thrash about. It didn't even fight. It locked onto her neck, and that was it. Then something else happened. It looked up, directly toward the ridge I was on. It didn't hear me, there's no way. It just knew I was there. It was checking the area to make sure nothing else was around to challenge it. And for one brief second, its head turned in my direction. I didn't even blink. I held my breath. I did not dare move. It didn't react. It didn't seem threatened. It just settled back down and started dragging the cow toward the thicker timber, one-handed. I stayed until dark because leaving the ridge meant passing closer to where it had gone, and I wasn't about to test my luck. When I finally made my way out, I carried my rifle low and kept looking behind me every 30 steps or so. I've hunted alone most of my life, but that was the first time I ever caught myself wishing someone else was there with me. I've never been that scared in my life, and that's hard for me to admit. I don't pretend to know what dogmen are, but I know I saw one, and I know how they hunt. They hunt with patience. They hunt with purpose. They hunt with a high range of intelligence and strategy. It hunted with more intelligence than anything that should be walking in these mountains. I've seen wolves hunt smart. I've seen all kinds of predators do their thing. But whatever this was, it was thinking in a whole different level. And that's the part that keeps me quiet about it. I don't really know what else to say. Take this as a warning if you're a hunter. I don't think there's anything you can carry that will protect you from this thing. If you see one, all you can do is pray that it's not hungry or it doesn't want you. Thanks. Anonymous. Ravalli County. Reels. I know you're a pretty busy guy, or I imagine you are. So I'll try not to make this long. I won't waste your time. I'm 24 now, but this took place 2 seasons back in the low country of South Carolina, down in one of those swampy stretches where the ground squishes under your boots and you can smell the black mud from a mile away. Now, my granddad has a little piece of property that butts up against a bigger swamp. It's been in the family forever. It's just woods, mud, and deer trails that never change. He taught me everything about hunting when I was a kid, so every late season I go out there and sit a trail that crosses a shallow creek. Bucks love using it right before dark. Anyway, this was in December. It was cold, but not comparable to real cold like up north. We don't get cold like that. The sun was dropping and everything had that glow in the trees. If you're a hunter, you know what I mean. That time right before the woods switches personalities. I was sitting about 10 yards off the creek crossing. There's a big old cypress stump there that I lean against. It's great cover, and you can hear deer splashing before they show up. Around 4:30, I heard something running way off. Hooves. I figured it was that tall 8-point I'd seen twice but never got a shot at. I eased my rifle up and got ready. When the buck came into view, it wasn't running like a deer normally runs when it's spooked. This thing was bounding. It wasn't blowing, it was dodging, like it was trying to outthink something behind it. It got to the creek and hesitated for a moment. That buck never hesitates there. I've watched deer cross that spot since I was old enough to hold a flashlight. They splash, they go, and that's it. But this one stopped dead and lifted its head high, sniffing toward the water like the danger wasn't behind it, but in front of it. That's when my guts locked up. Something was in the creek. It wasn't moving. It was just there. I didn't see it at first. The water was dark. There was shadows everywhere. But the buck took one step toward the bank, then backed up like it got hit with a smell I couldn't process. Then I watched the water shift. It wasn't ripples from a current. It shifted from weight like something heavy had been standing completely still under the surface. I felt my heart crawl up into my throat. That buck stared right at the water, tail twitching, ears flicking, muscles coiling up tight. I swear on my life it turned and tried to run back the way it came, which deer almost never do when something's chasing them. It didn't matter. Something rose up from that creek like it had been part of the mud. I only saw it for a second before the trees swallowed everything. But that second is burned into my brain and will be for the rest of my life. It wasn't standing on the bank. It was standing in the water, waist deep, shoulders hunched. Its head was shaped like a wolf, but longer in the snout. Rougher hair around the neck like a mane that got dragged through swamp filth. The eyes, they were too bright. It wasn't normal reflection. These things were amber and they seemed to be glowing like flashlights. Before the buck could even move its body to run, the thing moved. It was so fast there's no way it was completely unavoidable. It lunged up the bank in 2 strides and hit the buck from the side. They crashed into the mud hard enough that I felt the vibration through the stump I was leaning on. Leaves went everywhere. Mud splattered. The sound of that buck, the sound it made, didn't even sound like a deer. It was more like breath being knocked out of something that knew it wasn't getting another. Everything after that happened in silence, like dead silence. It didn't thrash or roar or shake its kill. It pinned the buck down with one arm, grabbed the back of its neck, and gave a good twist. A clean, brutal twist. No struggle. No drawn-out fight. I heard a sickening crack, and that was it. I looked toward the creek and saw that it looked toward the creek. It didn't look toward me, it looked toward the water, like it was checking for something, like the water was part of the plan. I realized then it had been standing in that creek not to hide, but to kill its scent, or at least that's what I think. I think it was doing that to erase itself, to wait at the one place the deer had to pass. That wasn't instinct. That was a level of intelligence that most animals don't possess. Hell, for that matter, most humans don't possess. The dog-man creature stepped backward, dragging the buck by its neck, half limp and half floating. Every step it took was slow and controlled, like it wasn't in a hurry and it wasn't struggling to carry this animal. It disappeared into the deeper part of the swamp, dragging that buck like a wet rag. I didn't dare try to move at that point. I didn't even breathe right for a good 30 minutes. I thought I was going to have a heart attack. I only left when the light was almost gone, and even then, I was like a scared little kid. I told my granddad what happened, and he just stared at the floor for a very long time. Then he told me, everything in that swamp hunts, boy. Some things just don't want to be seen doing it. You're very lucky. Be careful. That line has stuck with me ever since. T.H. Reels. I'm not a dramatic type. I don't tell stories. So I'm just going to give this to you the way it happened. I imagine that's how you want it, right? I hunt predators out in western Oklahoma pretty regular. Been doing it since my 20s, and I'm now 39. Where I live, coyotes aren't some mystical creature. They're pests. They dig through feed yards, they take livestock, and they come right up to the houses sometimes, which is highly dangerous, especially if you have small children. You run a collar, you shoot a couple. You sell the pelts or just bury them, whatever you choose to do. This happened 2 years ago in January. There was a cold front that came through. The sky was clear enough that every star looked like it was right on top of you. The wind was almost nothing, which is perfect for what I was trying to do. I set up on the edge of a wheat field. Real open country out here. Scattered brush, a few pockets of mesquite, slight rises and dips in the land. I had my Fox Pro collar staked about 30 yards out with a little decoy feather moving around in the breeze. Now normally you get a coyote coming in within 10 minutes of the collar starting. They circle downwind, they stop and look. Then you take your shot. It's all very predictable, and I've done it hundreds of times. But this night felt different from the second I got out of the truck, and it was different in a way that I couldn't explain at the time, so I ignored it. Big mistake. I'll try to explain the feeling so if you do read this, someone listening might understand if they feel this. You know how sometimes the air feels too empty, like too open? It was one of those nights even the cattle on the next property were bunched up by the barn instead of grazing. I put out the collar anyway and started with a soft rabbit in distress sound. Just something to get attention. 5 minutes go by, nothing. 8 to 10 minutes pass, nothing. Then all at once every single thing in that field went silent. Even the slight movement of the grass seemed to stop. I lowered the volume on the collar and listened. I heard footsteps, and they were behind me. They were steady, too spaced out to be a deer, and way too heavy to be a coyote, too slow to be cattle. I turned in my seat just a little, trying not to silhouette myself. I didn't see a thing, but the feeling hit me like a hammer. Whatever was out there wasn't coming for the rabbit sound. It was hunting the collar itself. Predators do that, sure, but not the way this thing was doing it. Coyotes come in cautious. Bobcats will come in low and slow. A lion, if we had any, would come in silent. This was different. It circled me. Not wide, not fast. Just circled. My thermal wasn't picking it up for some reason. Either it was staying behind rises in the ground or it was low enough that the brush was hiding it. The second sound, it came and it just kept moving. It seemed to be off to my right. Then it would be behind me again. Then it would be way off to the left. I don't know how it moved so quickly without me seeing or hearing it. I turned the collar completely off just to see what would happen. Deathly silent. Then I heard the exact same sound come back across the field, but not from my collar. Something was mimicking it. Not perfect, but close enough. A long, broken rabbit scream that sounded wrong, like the pitch was too deep or the breath behind it was too strong. Every muscle in my body tensed up. I raised my rifle up slow, and I finally caught sight of it. The far side of the field, crossing from one brush patch to the next. This tall, upright for a second figure. Then it went back low, and then upright again. It was testing the distance. It was testing me. Testing the caller. Predators do not analyze situations like that. They react. They see. They smell. They move. This thing was using the land to its advantage. It was using the shadows, even. Using the silence between my breaths. I don't even know how to describe this. To make you understand how insane this was. I watched it stop behind a mesquite cluster maybe 70 yards out. But just a shape at first. Very broad, very tall. It had arms that were just too long. Its head was angled downward toward the collar like it was studying it. I don't think it was fooled at all. I think it was deciding at that moment. Then it started moving in again, but not toward the rabbit sound. It was moving toward me. Directly in my direction. Like it had realized the collar wasn't the source of the real life in the field. Every instinct in me had told me not to shoot. Not because I didn't want to, because I wasn't sure a shot would matter. And if I didn't put it down with a shot, I knew damn well it would close that distance faster than I could cycle another round. It got within probably 40 yards, which is way too close. Close enough that I could see the outline through the brush. Its head was shaped wrong. Its legs were bent wrong. The shoulders were hunched forward like something about to drop to all fours. The eyes are what really messed me up. They reflected the light back in a way I've never seen. This wasn't like a normal predator. It was way more intense than that. More focused. Like it was waiting for me to make the first mistake. Then it made a sound, barely above a whisper. I realized it wasn't a growl, it was sniffing. It was tasting the air, working the wind like a professional. It wasn't here for the collar. It was here for the thing the collar would bring in. Me. I never saw it show its teeth. I never heard it growl. It just turned, crouched down, and melted back into the brush like a shadow that moved between darker shadows. I sat there for a few minutes, holding my rifle up, waiting for, I don't really know, something, anything. But nothing came. When I finally worked up the nerve to stand, my legs were shaking so bad I couldn't trust my first step. I walked out of that field. I made it. I left the collar still on the ground, the decoy still spinning. I didn't go back for him. I won't go back for him. I've been calling predators for almost 20 years. I've seen dangerous animals. I've been charged by hogs, I've been stalked by coyotes, none of that feels like this felt. I cannot describe to you in words the feeling I had of dread, the very thought that this was my last moment on Earth. It's something that has to be experienced firsthand, and I pray that no one understands what I mean. Anyone can take this however they want. You can come to terms with it, you can deny it, you can call me a liar if that makes you feel better. But if you take nothing else, please understand. I'm not lying to you. I told you exactly what happened, what I saw, how it behaved, and this is not a joke. If you go out there, if you're hunting, hiking, whatever you're doing, close to or inside the wilderness, you better carry some sort of protection, no matter what it may be. And no, I don't mean a knife or a machete. At least have a can of bear spray. At least. Thanks, Reels. D.R. Custer County. Reels. I really hope you're going to believe me, 'cause most people don't. I've run through every possibility in my head for over a year now, and Nothing seems to fit. I can't explain any of it. This happened east of Roswell, out in the country where the land is so open you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. Flat prairie, shallow draws, short grass, nothing to hide behind except low ridges, and that's about it. I hunt pronghorn out there. I have for years. It's not like elk or deer hunting. Pronghorn see everything. The only way to beat them is to know the terrain better than they do, and move slow enough that they don't get your silhouette. This was October 2023. It was clear out that day, high visibility. Perfect day for glassing. I'd climbed up on a low ridge overlooking a basin. Took me maybe 40 minutes to crawl up there without being seen. But once I was set, I had a perfect field of view. I spotted a herd, feeding about a half a mile out. A dozen does, 3 young bucks. Nothing big enough to shoot, but I was enjoying watching them. Watching pronghorn through a spotting scope is honestly one of the most peaceful things in the world. They were relaxed, flicking their tails, moving, shifting positions, completely unaware of anything. Then, around the 10-minute mark, they all looked up at the same time. Not toward me, not toward the wind, toward a dry area that cut through the basin. I scanned it with my binos, nothing. Checked with the scope, still nothing. But I knew, I could feel it deep down, something was off. The dust down there wasn't moving the way dust normally moves. There was a disturbance, and it wasn't the wind. It was more like something heavy, moving its weight, slow enough that the dust didn't rise in a cloud, it just kind of rolled. I kept glassing that spot, and unfortunately, I finally saw what I was looking for. A shape, moving with a rhythm that doesn't match any animal that I know. It was very low to the ground. It wasn't a light trot either. Not the rolling stride of a dog or a hog. Not the shoulder-heavy movement of a big cat. This thing was staying below the lip of the area, only exposing part of its back now and then when it passed lower cuts. At first I thought maybe this could be a person crawling, but people don't cover that much distance that fast and that smoothly. They don't move with that kind of flow. It was unnatural. They don't synchronize every movement with the exact moment their prey lowers its head to feed. But that's exactly what this thing did. Every time the pronghorn dipped their heads, it slid forward a few feet. When they lifted, it stopped, perfectly timed. That was the moment the hair on my arms began to stand up. It wasn't timing them, it was studying them and their movements. The pronghorn moved again, just a small, natural repositioning. That thing adjusted its route instantly, as if it had been waiting, anticipating for that exact angle to open up. It stalked like something that had spent its whole life learning exactly how far pronghorn can see and exactly how much movement their eyes are able to catch. I finally caught a clearer glimpse as it passed a deeper cut. I saw long, dark fur, not thick like a bear, more sleek, like an animal that's built for speed. Its shoulders were forwardly sloped. The back legs were bent the wrong way, like something that could drop into a sprint faster than physics should allow. The head, I'm sure that's what everyone, including you, is probably wondering. It was out of place for me. It was definitely that of a wolf or a Doberman pinscher. That's the best comparison I have. So if that tells you what it was, then so be it. Call it what you want. It lifted its head once, just a quick rise, checking the herd spacing. I saw that long snout, and I saw those pointed ears. Even at that distance through a scope on high magnification, I could tell the eyes were too far forward to belong to a normal canine. Predators have forward-facing eyes. These things were forward, more like a person's placement, but deeper set. Then the entire basin shifted. The pronghorn started to move, just drifting toward a spot in the basin where the ground dipped down slightly. It wasn't a good escape route. It wasn't a place they would normally go. It was somewhere a human hunter would want them to move if he was trying to corner one. And it dawned on me right then. That thing knew where they'd go next. It was shaping the herd without even getting close. The second the pronghorn were lined up wrong, one trailing behind maybe 6 or 7 yards. The creature made its move. Now, it didn't move like a lion. It didn't leap like a wolf. It shot out of there like a bullet fired from the earth itself. One moment it was hidden. The next it was in the open, covering 40 yards in seconds. The pronghorn didn't even have time to even react at all. The one in the back lifted its head, confused, just as the creature hit it, at an angle so clean it looked choreographed. I saw dust explode, the rest of the herd took off in every direction, and the creature didn't spare them a glance. It finished the kill quickly, too quickly for me to see how it happened. It just dragged the pronghorn back towards where it came from, like it was just carrying a duffel bag. It wasn't even panting. It wasn't looking around for other threats. It knew it was the king of that situation. It was just done. Now I sit up on that ridge until dark, not because I was afraid to move, because in my mind, for some odd reason, I wanted to see it again. I wanted to see it again to prove that what I just witnessed was actually real. Whatever that was, it was moving down in those cuts like a person would move. I've hunted my whole life. I've seen every predator you can think of and how they stalk, how they ambush, how they chase. Nothing I've ever seen planned their movements the way that thing did. This thing was not reacting to the herd. It was directing them the way that it wanted them to go. I'll tell you something else before I end this. It didn't look surprised that the hunt worked out. It looked like it happened exactly as it expected it to, like it always does. I hope this helps someone, or shines some light on a question someone may have. As far as are they physical or are they spiritual? I don't know about you, Reels, but this answers the question for me. Ghosts and spirits and demons have no need to hunt for food. J. L. Chavez County. Hey, Reels. My encounter eats at me every time I look at my dogs, or when I walk past the timberline behind our camp. I've hunted black bear in north central Pennsylvania since I was a teenager. I'm 33 these days. I've run hounds with my dad, my uncles, and just about every local in this county who still believes in old-school hunting. Just so this makes sense, this happened during the legal firearms bear season, in a WMU where running hounds is permitted. We weren't baiting, weren't doing anything sketchy, just hunting the same way we've hunted for years. If you've ever hunted bear with dogs, then you know the drill. Dogs strike a track, start barking, collars light up on the handheld, and the whole group moves to cut the bear off or meet the dogs at the tree. That morning started normal. Cold, frost on everything. The kind of morning where sound travels too far and your breath comes out in puffs of smoke. We had 5 dogs out, all legal, all experienced, tough, reliable bear dogs. They've run dozens of bear without hesitation. They don't back down from anything, except whatever this was. Around 9 in the morning, the collars lit up. The dogs all at once acted like they struck a track. But the barking didn't sound right. They didn't sound excited, not aggressive, more like confused whining mixed with warning growls. My buddy Mark said that's not a bear track, not the way they're acting. The dogs kept pushing deeper into the woods, circling one tight spot over and over like they didn't want to commit. Finally, 2 of them broke off and started baying, which normally means they've got a bear held in thick cover and are waiting on us to close the distance. We expected to hear the usual, dogs fighting to hold a bear in place until we got there. Instead, the baying stopped. Dead silence. Then the GPS showed both dogs running back toward us, full retreat. That's the first time in my life I've ever saw bear dogs run away from the very thing they're cornering. We figured it was maybe a big boar, and the dogs just got bluffed. It happens sometimes, though not often. But when we got to the place where they'd bayed, everything about it was wrong. First thing we saw was a deer, or what was left of one. Not a bear kill, more like something ripped it apart and didn't care what pieces went where. The rest was dragged into brush, not bait, not corn, not feed, just a natural kill site, and a violent one at that. And before either of us could make any sense of that, something roared in the timber ahead of us. This wasn't a bear roar, not even close. This was a lot deeper, more anger than warning. We both froze up. We heard footsteps, pounding the ground hard enough that the leaves were shaking. Something massive was running through the timber, and it wasn't running away. It was chasing something. Right then, not far away, up ahead, a huge black bear burst out from behind a rock, sprinting like it was being chased. And behind it, brother, I still see it clear as day now that I'm sitting here typing this. That thing chasing it wasn't losing ground. It was gaining, and gaining quickly, running like the woods didn't even exist around it. The bear was terrified, you could see it. Imagine that for a second. Let's stop. A fully grown Pennsylvania black bear, maybe 300 plus pounds, running for its life. Then this dogman thing hit it. It wasn't a tackle, not a struggle. This was just a impact, like a train wreck. 1 second the bear was running. The next second its whole body was sideways, smashed onto the ground. We felt the ground vibrate under our boots. It hit so hard. That creature was on it instantly. It pinned the bear with both hands, grabbed the back of its skull, and twisted in one violent motion. A wet, hollow crack. Instant kill, lights out. A full-size black bear ended in a split second. Imagine that. Think on it for a second. It turned its head toward us after that, which made my stomach cave in on itself. It didn't turn its body, it only turned its head, very slowly too, as if it did it for dramatic effect. It knew we were standing there the whole damn time. It wanted us to see that. It didn't come after us. It didn't posture up. I never heard it growl or anything. It simply stepped off the bear, grabbed it by a hind leg, and dragged it back toward the timber like it had earned its meal and had no intentions of sharing, which was fine with me. The dogs, the same dogs that will charge a wounded bear without hesitation, were hiding behind us, tails tucked, shaking like they just wanted to leave. I've never seen them do that. Ever. We backed out of there, rifles shaking in our hands. Didn't fire a shot. Not at the bear, not at the creature. We weren't about to risk it during legal season with dogs in the area, and honestly, I don't think a shot would have mattered anyway. Back at the trucks, no one talked for a long time. All Mark finally said was, "Whatever that was, we are not the apex out here. I need to think on this for a while." Now, I haven't run dogs out there since, and I'm not sure I will ever go again. S.M., Clinton County, Pennsylvania.
Hi. I'm sorry this is long. I didn't plan on writing this much, but I've been holding this in for far too long. I'm at the point now where I don't know who to even talk to about it, because everyone I know either laughs at stuff like this or tells me I'm just too stressed, and I'm hearing things. But I'm not. I really wish that I was. I live outside Bedford, Virginia, maybe 10, 12 minutes from town, even if that. I have a small place on an old gravel road that dead ends. It goes nowhere, except 2 other houses. Those folks keep to themselves. It's quiet out here. Lately, it's been too quiet. I work for a local appliance repair company. I'm gone most of the day. Usually don't get home till after dark, sometimes 8 or later, depending on the calls. I got one dog, Toby. He's getting old. He's 12 now and slowing down, but he still acts like my shadow. Always been a good dog. He's the only reason I'm not totally losing it right now. Anyway, back in February, this all started. I remember the first time it happened exactly, 'cause I thought we had an earthquake or something. The floor did this shake around 1:45 in the morning. Scared the hell out of me. I sat up and listened, but nothing else happened, so I figured maybe it was a truck going past or the heater kicking on weird. The next night, it happened again, around the same time. Except this time I wasn't just a shake. I heard something down there, underneath the house. My place sits on a half crawl space, maybe 3 foot tall at most. I never really messed with it besides putting some tools in there maybe once or twice. The sound I heard was not pipes. It wasn't ventilation. It wasn't water. It sounded like something breathing. Like whoever it was taking long, dragging breaths, almost like snoring. More like something big trying to breathe, quietly but failing to do so. Toby, he heard it too. He lifted his head and growled real low. He never growls at anything unless it's serious. I got up, checked every room like an idiot, 'cause I was expecting someone laying on the kitchen floor. That's how loud this was. I checked every room. I couldn't find anything out of place. This went on for at least a week. The same thing every night, between 1:30 and 2 in the morning. The floor was vibrating a little, and that damn breathing underneath me. I started losing sleep. I was nodding off during jobs, while driving. One lady complained I hooked her dishwasher up wrong, but I didn't. She just had a bad outlet. But my boss still talked to me about slipping lately. One night I'd got pissed and had enough. I grabbed a flashlight, went outside in the cold, and opened the crawl space door. I don't know what I thought I was going to do. Scare off a raccoon, maybe. That was my hope, anyway. Because anything bigger than a raccoon, well, I wasn't ready to think about that. I was hit with a smell immediately. It smelled like a metallic, wet tang smell. It wasn't blood exactly, but very close. I got on my stomach and shined the light around. I saw dirt, insulation, some spider webs. Nothing. As I was about to crawl back away and give up my search, I heard that same slow breathing, but this time it sounded like it was only a few feet in front of me. The flashlight hit two shiny spots. I thought it was nails or something reflecting, so I shifted the light and realized they were eyes. They were wide apart, and no animal in Virginia holds its head up like that in a crawl space. This thing was tall enough that its eyes were level with the floorboards above it, like it was lifting itself up. I couldn't even move backwards because my body just wouldn't do it. The eyes, I watched them narrow a little, like it was focusing on me. I swear my whole chest tightened up. I started to tingle. Toby started barking inside the house like crazy. I scrambled backward as fast as I could, and I even scraped my back on the frame. I slammed that door shut and ran inside. After that night, things got worse. The breathing kept happening, but now it was moved, like it walked from one side of the house to the other. I would hear it under the living room, then under the hallway, then under my bedroom like it was checking each spot. One morning I found dirt pushed out from under one of the vents like something was clawing upward. The next week the sounds changed altogether. It started whispering. I couldn't make out words, but it was sounds and sounded like someone trying to talk with a mouthful of water. It was drawn out syllables. Sometimes it almost sounded like my name, but I couldn't really tell. It was stretched out and didn't sound human. Toby started refusing to come inside at night. He'd stand at the door, shaking, looking at the floor like it's going to open up and swallow him. I have to carry him in sometimes. There's no way I'm leaving him out there. I called a company to come out and check for animals or structural problems. The guy crawled under there for maybe 20 seconds before backing out, pale as a ghost. He said something isn't right, and that I needed pest control instead. Pest control came and said they didn't see signs of anything living down there. No animal droppings, no tunnels. Yet the noises never stopped. 3 nights ago is when I honestly thought I was going to lose my mind. I was in the kitchen grabbing something to drink around midnight. The floor actually lifted. I'm not talking about shaking or vibrating. I mean it lifted, like something pushed up with its back or its shoulders. Maybe half an inch, but high enough to see my coffee mug slide a little. I stood there completely shocked, watching the floor settle back down. Then I heard that whispering again. It was louder, and it was right beneath me like someone talking straight through the wood. I couldn't sleep at all. How could I? I don't sleep much anyway. Yesterday morning, I went outside to clear my head. The crawlspace door was cracked open. I hadn't opened it. Nobody else was here. I checked the latch. It wasn't broken. It was opened by something. I locked it with a padlock this time. Tonight, I don't know. Tonight is bad. Worse than the other nights. I keep hearing thumps under the living room like something hitting the beams with its hand. Toby is hiding behind the couch, shaking so bad the cushions are vibrating. I swear I can hear something under there. It's moving, breathing through the vent behind me as I type this. It's been going on for 10 minutes now. The whispering keeps stopping and starting like it's waiting for me to respond. I don't know what to do. I keep telling myself I'm tired, I'm stressed. It's all my imagination. But I know what I saw under there, and I know what I keep hearing every night. Something is living under this house, and it wants me to know it's there. I don't know how much more of this I can take. I don't have the money to move, and no one believes me. I'm writing this because I gotta tell someone before I just break down completely. I hope this email makes sense, and I hope someone has some sort of advice for me. I'm shaking too much to reread it. I hope I didn't make too many mistakes as I'm under pressure at the moment. Thanks, Reels. David. Now, this email came in a little over 3 weeks ago. I've actually talked to David on the phone several times, and it seems here lately some of the things I've told him to do. I had him put in some motion-activated lights and a few other tricks I've learned from other people along the way. It seems as though whatever it was is gone now. He hasn't had any more incidents as of, 2 weeks ago. Thanks, David, for reaching out. I'm glad I could help. If you have any more problems, if you're listening, be sure and email me or give me a text. Thanks, brother. Stay safe. Hello, Reels, or whoever reads this. It's only me, buddy. My daughter helped me find your email. I'm not good at this sort of thing, so I hope this goes through. I don't know how these things usually work. I don't know if there's a way that you go about this, but I'm just going to say it out like I would tell my sister or someone on the phone. My name, you can just use Helen, and I live outside Worcester, Massachusetts, in a town called Leicester, Leicester. I would research these names, guys, but I kind of read these on the spot sometimes. I clean houses for a living. Been doing it since my kids were little. I'm 63 now, and my knees complain every set of stairs, but I still manage. The road I have to drive in the mornings is what started all this. I leave my house around 4:45 a.m. most days because my job is across town, and the lady likes her place done before she leaves for work. If you know the area, I cut down Paxton Street, and then take the road that goes by the old cemetery on the hill before you get closer to Worcester. It's a small place. Old stones, iron fence in some spots. The rest is just open with a low stone wall. I've never paid much attention to it besides thinking it looks sad in the winter. This all really started after that big snowstorm we had at the end of January. The plows had pushed the snow up high along the sides of the road, so the cemetery looked like a sheet of white with these gray stones poking out. The first morning that I saw it, I thought I was just tired. I was driving by, sipping my coffee, same as always. When the headlights swung across the cemetery, I saw what I thought was someone crouched down behind a headstone near the front. I remember it because the only thing that didn't look like a straight line or a stone was this thing. It was just a shape that didn't fit. I figured it was probably a deer bedded down or even a person, but it seemed odd for anyone to be in there at that time of day, in that cold. It was 11 degrees that morning. I slowed down a little, but I didn't stop. You don't pull over alone before 5 in the morning by a cemetery. At least, I don't. And I wouldn't recommend it. All that day, I couldn't help but think about it off and on. When I drove home, it was fully daylight, and I looked over. There was no one or nothing there, just rows of stones and snow like normal. 2 mornings passed. It happened again. The same graveyard, same curve in the road, same general spot. Headlights hit the stones, and there behind it, the same crouched shape. It was taller than a human sitting, shorter than someone standing up. It was like someone squatting with their arms resting on their knees or something like that. Only this time I could tell it wasn't wearing a coat or a hat or anything that looked like clothes. There was no color separation, just a dark shape against the snow. My stomach did a little flip when I realized that. I thought, okay, maybe it's a bush or a broken stone I've just never noticed. You start arguing with yourself. I told my daughter about it, and she said, "Mom, it's probably just a branch in front of a stone or something dumb." We laughed about me needing more sleep. That should have been the end of it, except it wasn't. The third time I saw it, it wasn't crouching anymore. I was a few seconds earlier than usual, maybe 4:40 instead of 4:45. As I came around that bend, my headlights went across the front row of stones. The shape was there again, only this time it was standing. It was too tall. That's the part that instantly made my whole body go cold. It didn't look right with the rest of the cemetery. Everything out there is short and square or rounded stone. This thing broke the line. It was up above the stones by quite a few feet or more. The head was long. I don't know how to put it. Not like a normal head and shoulders. More like the neck went up too far, and the head was craning forward toward the road. I could feel it looking at my car. That sounds crazy even as I type it, but I swear on my grandkids that's how it felt. Like something that was used to the dark and didn't like my lights on it. I sped up. The whole day I couldn't get rid of that. Every time I walked past a window in the houses I was cleaning, I would check outside without even meaning to. My heart would jump if I saw a tall shadow or shape anywhere, even if it was just a tree. I kept saying over and over to myself, "Helen, you're too old to be spooking yourself over a shadow in a cemetery. Get a grip." I tried, trust me. A few nights later is when it followed me home, or at least that's the only way I know how to think about it. We had another light dusting of snow that night. Not much, just enough to cover what the plows had thrown around. I got home from my last job around 7:30. It was already dark. I live in a small single-story house with a finished attic where my grandson sleeps when he visits. Out back there's a line of old maple trees and then woods. It's not deep woods like out west, but enough trees to feel like a wall when it's dark out. I was in the kitchen doing dishes when I heard what I thought was someone walking in my yard. Out in the snow, it was that slow crunch sound. It wasn't moving fast, not like kids running, just a thing walking. I turned off the water and listened. My neighbor's dog started barking down the street. Then another dog further away. Mine died a few years ago, so my house was silent, except for my own breathing. I went to the back window over the sink and pulled the curtain back with 2 fingers. You do that thing where you don't want whoever's out there to see you looking. The light on my back porch is motion activated. It had came on. It lit up a good circle of my yard and sort of the tree line. I didn't see anything but the way the shadows were on the snow. They just didn't look right. They were stretched too far one way. I stood there about a minute, and that's when I saw it. Between 2 of the maple trees at the back, just outside the motion light's reach, there was a dark shape standing there. Same kind of tall, thin shape I'd seen at the graveyard. I couldn't make out arms or legs or anything clean. It just looked narrow at the bottom, and then wider up top, with the head turned toward my house. I dropped the curtain. My heart was going 100 miles an hour. I could hear it in my ears. I backed away from the window and grabbed the landline like I was going to call someone. Who? The police? Tell them there's something watching me from the trees? I put it back down. If you start talking like this, they'll lock you up, especially when you get older, around my age. The word senile will get thrown around. Anyways, after I dropped the curtain, the crunching in the snow started again. It sounded like it was getting closer to the house. I didn't look out again. I turned on every light. in the back of the house and went into the living room and turned the TV up loud. I didn't sleep much that night, only a couple hours. The next morning when I stepped out, I checked the yard. Out by the edge of the motion light area, there were marks in the snow. It didn't appear to be footprints like you see on TV. Not neat boot prints either. More like places where something heavy had pressed down with not a clear shape. Just these big ovals, almost too far apart for my legs to match. That's all I know. From that night on, it was like it knew where I lived. I started seeing that same tall outline out in the corner of my eye more and more. Sometimes it would be standing by the telephone pole across the street after dark. Once it was beside my shed. It was never close enough for my porch light to show a lot of details. It was always just standing there, angled toward me. The worst part hasn't even happened yet. The worst part was my bedroom window. My bedroom window is on the first floor, but the back window sits higher off the ground because of how the land slopes down. There's a good 7 feet under it, outside. I've never had to worry about anyone looking in. One night I woke up because something tapped on the glass. 3 slow taps. Not like a branch smacking it in the wind, either. It was 2 regular, like knuckles. I laid there thinking I'd dreamed it. Then it did it again. 3 more. Same exact rhythm. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I stared at the ceiling and prayed like I haven't prayed in 20 years. Whoever says they'd jump up and go look is lying. I couldn't make myself move. After what felt like forever, I forced myself to roll onto my side so I could see the window. The blind was down, but you can still see if someone is right up against it because it makes a dark shape. There was definitely something standing there. Very close. It almost looked like it was resting against the wall in the window. All I could see was that tall, dark mass filling the whole frame. This is when I caught a few of the features. I knew. The terrible part was that it was right on the other side of a thin pane of glass, looking directly inside. I saw a pure canine-shaped head. I saw the ears. I could see the snout. It was definitely a dog man. I didn't sleep that night. After that, I watched that window until the room got lighter. By morning, whatever it was gone. When I finally got brave enough to actually get up and check outside, the siding under that window had long streaks on it, like something had been scratching at it. I stopped driving past the cemetery after that. I take the longer route, even if it makes me late. I know that sounds backward, like avoiding it does nothing if it already found me, but I can't stand the thought of seeing it in both places. My daughter thinks I'm just finally freaking out from being alone too much, as she put it. My sister told me to get my eyes checked. None of that feels right. This doesn't feel like floaters in my vision or nerves. This feels like being watched by something evil that doesn't care if I understand it or not. I haven't had any other taps on the window in a month or so, but I also started sleeping in the small front room instead of my bedroom. I don't open the curtains in the back of the house after dark. I don't stand at the sink with the light behind me anymore. I don't know if this is what people call Dog Man, but I think so. It could be something else, I suppose, or just my brain finally cracking. All I know is I saw that shape, that thing at the cemetery 3 times, and then I started seeing it near my yard, and then at my window. That's enough for me. If you read this on your show, or whatever you do with these, please just change my name and don't say the exact street. I still live here, and I don't want people driving by at night looking for it. I already feel like something is paying too much attention to this house. Thank you for letting me get this out. I feel a little stupid sending it, but I also feel like keeping it to myself is worse. Helen. The street name I used is not the real street name, and Helen is not her real name. I've also spoken with Helen a couple times here lately. Things seem to have died down, and she hasn't had any more encounters or sightings, whatever you want to call it. I told her if something else happens to be sure and let me know. I don't know how much help I can be, but I'll do what I can. Thanks, Helen. I hope things are going better for you. The subject of this email says, I don't know what happened out there, and I'm honestly scared. Hey man, I don't really know how long these emails are supposed to be, if there's a certain length or questions you want me to answer, but I'm kind of freaking out, and I figured if anyone might at least read this, you would. I'm not trying to get any attention or anything. I just don't know who else to even talk to. I've tried to reach out to others, but I seem to get no response or the runaround. You can just use the name Josh. I live up near Nederland, Colorado. I work at a ski resort doing maintenance, mostly the lifts and the rentals building. I'm 25. I'm not a kid. I'm not into ghost stuff or cryptid stuff. None of that. I'm the last person who would have believed this even 2 months ago. But something happened to me on my walk home from work, and something keeps happening after it, and I can't ignore it anymore. I've been looking online for days. That's how I found this channel. I guess I'll just start with the night that it happened. It was the end of January. Snow everywhere, but not a storm. I got off late because we had to fix one of the chairlift pulleys, and it took forever. I didn't have my car because my roommate borrowed it, so I walked home like I've done 1,000 times. It's only like a half a mile through the woods if you cut behind the cabins and through the maintenance trail. I've never been scared walking through there. I've seen elk, foxes, probably a mountain lion once, but I've never had any issues. I've never been afraid of the woods or the wildlife. This night it was extremely quiet. I mean, weirdly quiet, but I didn't think much of it. I had my earbuds in for the first part, but the battery died, so I just walked listening to the snow crunch under me. There was this weird, warm, cold, warm thing in the air, like pockets of warm air that didn't make sense, but whatever. I got about 200 yards from the road when I heard someone say my name. It was as clear as day. The voice sounded like my mom. My mom lives in Kansas City. It didn't echo right either. It sounded like it came from the trees, but also like it was right over my shoulder at the same time. I turned around. There was nothing. No one behind me. It was just the trees. I was alone. I said out loud, hello, 'cause I thought maybe someone from work followed me or was trying to mess with me. No answer. Then it said my name again, the same exact voice, same tone, same inflection, like a recording of my mom when she used to wake me up for school. I swear to you, I'm not crazy. I felt this weird feeling like either I should run or I should walk toward where it came from. Like two thoughts trying to happen in my head at once. I don't know how to explain it. It was like being pulled both ways. Then I saw something move in the pines. It was taller than anyone I know, and it moved too smoothly, like it was gliding instead of stepping. I took one step back, and the next thing I remember is waking up on the gravel across the road near the resort. I was laying face down with snow stuck in my hair. My phone said it was 3:17 a.m. The time between hearing my name and waking up was only like 2 minutes in my head, maybe less. But in reality, it was almost 3 hours. I didn't have frostbite or anything, but I was freezing and very disoriented. I got home and my roommate asked why I was banging around at 3:30 in the morning. I told him I slipped on the trail. I didn't want to sound insane. I figured maybe I hit my head or something. Concussion. Except there wasn't a mark on me, no bruise, no lump. The nightmares started soon after that. When they first started, the dreams were I'd be standing in the woods calling for help and hearing my mom answer but never seeing her. It got worse over time. Now it's always the same dream. I'm in my bed, but it's like I'm awake inside the dream. I can't move, I can't talk. The room is dark except for light from the street lamp through the blinds. Something tall is crouched at the foot of my bed. It don't move, it just watches me. I can't see its face. It's like the shadows bend around its head. Every time I blink in the dream, it's closer. One blink, it's by the foot of the bed. The next blink, it's by my knees. The next blink, it's beside me, leaning its head down like it's trying to hear me breathe. I always wake up drenched in sweat right before it touches me. I haven't slept a full night for months. That's not even the scariest part. This is gonna sound crazy, but I don't care anymore. Its voice followed me into real life. A week ago, I was in the rental building putting away snowboards when I heard my coworker, Mark, call my name from behind me. Not just my name, it was in his voice. I turned around expecting him to be there. The building was completely empty. I stepped outside and he was on the other side of the resort talking to customers. He was nowhere near me. I didn't even tell anyone about that. This is the first time I've mentioned it. Yesterday I woke up and my door was halfway open. I always close it. Always. I live with 2 people, and they swear they didn't come in. My roommate actually joked like, maybe you sleepwalk. Except here's the thing. My boots were wet, like I had been outside. There were little bits of pine needles on them too, like ones from the trail. I don't remember going anywhere. I don't sleepwalk. I never have. I didn't tell them about that either. I don't know if this is a dog man or something else entirely. When it's in my room in those paralyzing nightmare moments, its face and head looks similar to what I've heard described. It either has pointed ears or some type of weird horns on its head, and it definitely has an elongated snout. I looked it up, and some people talk about mimicking voices or causing missing time. I don't care what name this has, I just want it to stop. Some online have suggested that it's some type of skinwalker. Last night I heard my mom's voice again inside the apartment from the hallway. The exact same tone she uses when she's worried, except she isn't here. She hasn't been here in almost a year. I didn't open my bedroom door. I just sat there and waited for it to stop. It whispered my name 3 separate times like it was trying to get me to answer. Then it went quiet. I don't know what's happening to me. I don't know if this thing is still in the woods or if it followed me home or if I lost time and brought it with me somehow. I'm scared to sleep. I keep the bathroom light on because if the room is pitch black, my chest starts tightening like something's in there with me. I'm always feeling like I'm being watched. I keep thinking if I close my eyes for too long, I'll see that crouched shape again. I don't want to tell my family because they'll think I'm crazy. And maybe I am. Maybe this was just some weird neurological episode. But my boots were wet, and something called my name last night using my mother's voice. If you read this, just don't say the exact town. People around here talk too much, and I don't want anyone from work hearing about this. They'll think I'm on some type of drugs. I just want someone to know what happened in case this gets worse or I start losing more time. I don't know what else to do. Josh, Colorado. I don't even know what to say about this one, really. The events in the bedroom with the nightmares and the thing at the foot of the bed, that sounds more like sleep paralysis to me. I could be wrong, but I've had that happen to me several times in my life, and it sounds exactly like sleep paralysis. As far as the voices go, I can't really explain that one. I don't really know if that's related to Dogman, even though I've heard similar things in the past. It very well could be. I just don't have any answers for this one. I don't know if I should use my name, but it's Earl. Use it or don't, that's up to you. I don't care either way. I live out in the Bighorn Basin part of Wyoming. I have my whole life. I'm 58. I do fence work mostly, some ranch stuff. I keep to myself mostly, except for work and the store in town. I'm not good at writing. I failed English class, so this is going to sound or read rough. I don't want to spook anyone or anything or sound spooky. I don't got the education for fancy talk. I'm just telling it how it happened because it's been bothering me and it's hard for me to sleep. This was the middle of March. It was cold at night, but the days were starting to warm a bit. I had a job fixing about a quarter-mile of bad fence for a rancher out toward Manderson, place way out there. Long dirt road, nothing but willows and open ground for miles. I worked till dark 'cause the wind had been kicking up earlier and I fell behind. By the time I packed my tools up and threw stuff in my truck, it was full dark. The stars were out bright. I don't like driving those back roads late. Not 'cause I'm scared of anything, just lots of deer and elk and sometimes idiot kids flying around corners. But that night just felt strange right off the bat. It's like the sky was too quiet. Maybe it sounds stupid, but that's how it felt. I got about a mile from the ranch gate, going maybe 45, when I heard a thump on the roof of my truck. Loud, like someone dropped a bowling ball on top. It scared the crap out of me. The truck even jerked sideways, and I almost went off the shoulder. The first thing I thought was a damn rock from an overpass, but there ain't no overpasses out there. Then I thought maybe something fell out of a tree, but there ain't no trees high enough, and sure as hell not over the road. Explain that one. If you can't, I'm about to explain it for you. Whatever it was started moving on the roof. I could feel it through the steering wheel. Whatever it was heavy. It was crawling front to back. The metal above my head dented down a little. I could see it in the rear-view mirror, bouncing. I hit the brakes. Stupid idea, but I did. I tried to throw it off. I stopped in the middle of the road. The whole truck shook when it moved. Felt like it leaned forward, like it was climbing down the windshield. I didn't look up. I knew if I looked up and saw a face, or whatever the hell it had, I'd lose my mind right there on the spot. So I just hit the gas and took off. The tires were spinning on the gravel before catching and throwing dust around. I felt it hang on for a few seconds. Claws or hands were sliding on the metal. I could hear it. Then it finally let go. I kept the pedal mashed until I got to town. When I parked under the street light by my trailer, I got out and looked. The roof was dented in 4 spots. Deep ones, like something real heavy was posted up on there. There were long scratches down the side, too. Not from a branch. Branches don't go in straight lines and nearly to the metal. I told myself it was probably some damn poacher messing around in a ghillie suit or some drunk kid, but that's just insane. Your brain will go in all different directions trying to come up with nonsense. It sure didn't explain how quiet it moved once it was up there. The thing that big should have shook the whole truck. I tried to forget about it. I kept working. A couple days pass, and I start seeing something out by the edge of my field, behind the old windmill. The first time I was coming in from town with some groceries. The sun was going down, and I saw that shape standing by the windmill. This thing was way too tall to be somebody, and it stood wrong, stiff, like it didn't know how legs were supposed to bend. And speaking of that, its legs were bent the wrong direction. The knees were pointed backwards instead of frontwards. I watched it for a minute, thinking maybe my eyes were just seeing things. Then it stepped to the side and went behind the windmill tower. It didn't make a sound. I went out there with my flashlight and my rifle. I found nothing. It was gone. That same night I heard something walking around the trailer. It sounded like it circled a few times. I didn't go look, I'm not ashamed to say that. I stayed in my chair with the lamp on and waited it out. The next morning I did find some weird prints, and they were big ones. They were human-shaped, sorta, but a lot longer, like whatever it had for feet wasn't built like something you'd understand if you saw it. The toes looked long as well. The heel marks were deeper than my own. They went from the windmill straight to my yard and back again. After that, it kept showing up, always at a distance, always watching, staring at the house. Sometimes it would be standing in the field, sometimes by the shed. Once it was sitting, yes, sitting, like a man would with knees up, except its arms were too long for that to look natural. And the fact that its legs were bent the wrong way made it look even stranger. It just watched my place. One night I came home late again. I don't know why I didn't ask someone to come stay or something. Pride, maybe. Anyway, I pulled up, the porch light was on and it was flickering, like the bulb was about to blow. Something was standing behind my truck. It was way taller than the top of the cab. I only saw it in the mirror when I stopped. I saw a long snout, yellow eyes, and pointed ears on top of the head that were sort of laid back. As soon as I opened the door of the truck, I heard it take off and run into the dark. This thing was faster than a normal living being. There's nothing that could run away that fast. Nothing that I know of. The worst part, though, it was last week. I was lying in bed around 1 a.m. The wind was blowing something fierce. I heard a loud thump on the side of the trailer. Then another followed. It was like someone taking a few steps and ramming the wall with their shoulders. Whatever it was dragged what sounded like a palm or something sharp along the siding. Then it stopped right under my bedroom window. I don't want to talk about that part much. I heard something breathing, and it wasn't an animal. It wasn't a human either. This was too deep, and it sounded like it had a growl mixed in there somewhere. After a minute or two, it just walked away. That morning, I went out and looked under that window, and I found nothing. It hasn't come that close again, but it still stands out there by that windmill and sometimes in the field. Now I can make out the silhouette pretty well. It looks like what people describe on here, and I've asked a few people, and they say the same thing. Everyone's telling me this could be and most likely is a dogman, whatever that means. I don't know if this is the same thing or if there's more of them. I don't know if this is what climbed onto my truck, but I got a real bad feeling that it is. I've heard also these things will follow you home. but I didn't do anything to it. It chose to jump on my truck. I didn't hit it. I didn't even see it. I don't know how it got up there without me seeing it or hearing it come from the road. I don't know why it keeps coming back. I don't go outside when it's dark anymore. I don't walk out to fix anything after sunset. I keep all my curtains shut. I haven't told anyone around here or family because, well, for obvious reasons, we all know how that works out. Maybe I am messed up in the head. Maybe I imagine the whole damn thing. But the dents in my roof are still there. And the windmill it's always out there. It seems like it's almost every night now. I know what my eyes are seeing. I refuse to believe that I'm crazy or this is something that isn't there. I don't drink or do drugs, so hallucinations are out of the question. You can tell people this if you want, but keep exact locations and names out of it. Honestly, you can use my name. I think I told you in the beginning. It doesn't matter. Folks around here don't like attention. I just needed to talk to someone. I'm hoping I can get some sleep. And it stops messing with me for a day or two. I need a break. I need rid of this thing. Earl, out near the basin. This final email. This is a wild one. This one is intense. Hey man, I don't feel like my name should be part of this. I'm 46. I've been a diesel mechanic damn near 25 years. Mobile work, mostly. I go where the truck is, not the other way around. That means desert nights, busted rigs on the side of nowhere, ranch roads, all of that. I'm not scared of the dark, and I'm not scared of wildlife. I've slept in my truck more nights than in a real bed some years. I've seen some weird crap out in the desert, but nothing like this. This is something else. This has kept me up a many of a night for weeks straight. My hands shake when I try to drink coffee. That never used to happen to me. This was between Douglas, Arizona, and El Paso, Texas. If you know that stretch, it's ugly, empty land, dry washes, old fence posts, long stretches where your radio picks up nothing but static. Anyway, about 2 weeks ago, I got a call from a rancher out near Rodeo. His old Ford dually had died on him while he was hauling some fence wire. I drove out there around 6 in the afternoon. The sun was low. It took me forever because his directions were crap, like always. Got his truck running around 8. He took off fast because he didn't like the idea of being out there after dark. I found this strange. I stayed to clean up my tools. I got in my work truck and decided to sleep at one of those tiny rest pull-offs. The kind with a busted light like usual and a trash can full of beer cans. I've used it 100 times. By the time I got there, it was completely dark. It was cold, too. The desert cold is a different kind of cold. It'll get in your bones. The street light there flickers on and off. It throws this almost horror movie vibe across the pavement. I parked my rig under it, shut the truck off, and leaned back in the seat. I was just about to crash when I saw it. At the very edge of the light, right where the glow faded into dark, something was crouched under the busted light. It wasn't an animal that I'm familiar with. It wasn't shaped like something that I know. It was very tall, even while crouching. Its elbows were sticking out way too far. It had long, skinny arms, and its head was low, and it looked like it was sniffing the ground. This looked like the biggest dog I've ever seen in my life. I thought, if this is a stray, it's got to be one of the biggest dogs on record. or this is a person with some kind of weird suit on and they're tweaking out on some type of substance. He mentioned a specific one, but I'll keep that out. I set up slow. I didn't move too much because the cab light always kicks on if I lean forward. I didn't want whatever that was to see me. I kept watching it. The longer I looked, the less it made sense. The back was long and arched like a coyote, but the shoulders were very wide. Its shape kept shifting a little too, like it was breathing very slow. I couldn't see its face. Thank God for that. I told myself, just go to sleep. That's something that isn't there, or it's something you don't need to tangle yourself with. Ignore it. Go to sleep. I closed my eyes for maybe a total of 2 seconds and opened them again. This thing had stood up to the full height. It had to be at least 8 feet. It was tall enough that its head almost touched that broken light fixture. It was looking at my truck. I don't know if it could see me or if it just sensed me. My mouth went dry like I swallowed sand. I reached for my keys as slow as I could. Before I even turned the ignition, this thing did what I would call as a bluff charge. Or maybe it wasn't. As soon as it charged, my reaction was to hold down the horn. When I did that, it stopped and kind of flared its arms out and was flexing its fingers, opening and closing them. I didn't breathe for a good 30 seconds after I left there. The truck started and I peeled out, pedaled down, all the way to the floor. I don't know if it chased. I didn't look to see. I was too busy trying to keep it on the road. I thought I would never see this again. My first initial thought was I had seen some sort of demon. This was just the beginning, unfortunately. The next night I pulled into Lordsburg for fuel, a normal stop. I get out and see the dust on the side of my truck. It's fresh dust, like something had brushed up against it. I thought maybe a bush, then I saw some marks. They weren't scratches or handprints, not paw prints. They were little dents, shallow ones, and a pattern like fingertips had pressed into the metal. But the spacing was too big to be human, too wide. What could have the strength to just use its fingertips and dent metal? Again, I ignored it. 2 days later, I stopped outside El Paso, one of those dirt pullouts where truckers dump trash. I shut the truck off to check a coolant leak. I walked around the hood, found these 3 bones. They were bleached white, but fresh. They still had dried sinew on them. Big ones, too. Looked like maybe a deer leg bone. They were laid out in a line, like someone had placed them there right next to my tire. I kicked them away and left, but my gut was in knots the entire drive. That night I stayed at a cheap motel because I couldn't shake the feeling someone was watching me. I pulled the truck up right in front of my room door so I could see it through the window. Around 3 in the morning I heard tapping. Not on the door, not on the side of my truck, but on the window of the room. The taps always came in 3. I heard it at least 3 or 4 times. It was in perfect sequence. As I started creeping toward the window, it stopped. I moved the curtain back quick. The parking lot was empty. I started to go back to bed when the tapping started again. This time it was knocking on the door, lightly. It sounded like something sharp, maybe plastic or metal, tapping on the door. I couldn't see anything. I didn't want to see anything. I sat on the edge of the bed with the lights on. Didn't even take my boots off. I was ready to run if I had to. My whole body stayed cold for hours. I just waited for morning and prayed. The only explanation that made sense was someone was messing with me. But who in their right mind follows a mechanic across state lines tapping on his truck every night? I don't want to admit it, but I knew deep down whatever was in that rest stop didn't stay there. Then, just a few days ago, I pulled into a Circle K outside of Clint, Texas. The sun had barely been up. I got some coffee and walked back out and almost dropped it. There were these marks behind my truck. Not footprints like a man. These were giant paw prints that looked like a dog. They were definitely something with weight to it because the pressure points near the front were deep, pressing down through long toes or something similar to toes. They were spaced far apart like something big was walking slow. The tracks circled the back of my truck once, then went off behind the dumpsters. There was no visible trail or drag marks or any sign of anything like that. Not in any direction. Like this thing just stepped into the air and flew away. I felt sick, like my stomach fell out. I cleaned the windshield, got in, and drove without stopping until I reached this motel I'm sitting in right now. I moved the dresser in front of the door, even though I know damn well it won't stop whatever this is. If it wants me, I'm done. I don't know if it's following me because I saw it, or because I stopped in its place, or because my truck picked up a scent. Or hell, maybe it picked me for some reason. Maybe when I blew the horn like that, it ticked it off. Who knows why these things do what they do. All I know is I'm not sleeping in that truck until I figure out what to do. I keep hearing little taps outside the motel wall. It could be nothing, but after the few weeks I've had, I don't trust anything anymore. I'm sending this in case something happens, 'cause nobody would believe this if I told them to their face. I fix engines. I don't hallucinate. I don't get spooked easily. But this has me spooked. If you read this, don't give too much information. People down here are nosy as hell, and I don't want to start rumors. I just want to get some sleep again. That's all I'm asking for. I want my life to go back to normal. But after what I've seen, that's probably not a possibility. Anonymous. I have also had a conversation with this fella. This email came in about probably a month or so ago. It's been a while. He seems to be all right, and as far as I know, I haven't heard from him in a week or so, but the last time I talked to him, things had died down. Nothing else had happened. I hope it stays that way. Thanks for reaching out. I hope this somehow helped you. You know how to reach me if you need to. My name doesn't matter. I'm not seeking attention, and I sure as hell don't want people looking, trying to find me. I'm in my 60s now. I'm retired, and I've been carrying this thing around since 1990. I found your channel a few months back when my daughter showed me a video about a trucker in Mississippi. I didn't immediately think much about it, but the more I listened, the more I realized you're the only person I've heard who doesn't make everything sound like a joke or some campfire Hollywood nonsense. You actually sound like you give a damn, and that's rare. I'm not doing this to get it off my chest. That's what weak people say. I'm writing this because I'm tired of watching the truth get buried under excuses and paperwork. I'm tired of thinking about the man who died out there while the people in charge told us to keep our mouths shut. And most of all, I'm tired of holding on to something that never should have happened in the first place. Back in 1990, I was a ranger assigned to a remote section of forest in western Montana. If anyone's familiar with it, you know it's not exactly a tourist destination. It's mostly lodgepole pine, old timber pockets, thick fir stands, and dirt service roads that wash out if you breathe on them wrong. We patrolled poaching complaints, lost hikers, livestock issues, the usual. Small stuff. Nothing that I would call heroic. My partner back then was a guy named Reed. I won't say his last name here. He was older than me by 10 years, tougher than me by a lifetime. He'd been doing the job long enough to know when something is off. Good man, honest guy. Didn't drink much. Didn't run his mouth. This was the kind of man you're glad to have next to you when things start going sideways. We started getting reports in early spring, April, I think. People hearing something moving around at night, something big. A few folks had seen things. Livestock started acting strange. A few bear hunters said they encountered something strange up on the ridge. Nothing alarming at first. Folks can be confused. They can misidentify a lot of things. But the Montana woods talk. You hear all kinds of weird things out there. Elk coughing, mountain lions screaming like women, trees that crack under snow melt. Then we got a call that changed all of that. A man living off an old back road near the edge of the valley reported something dragging off one of his goats. He said he saw it from his porch around midnight. Said it was standing on two legs, and I remember sort of laughing under my breath when dispatch told me that. I figured he was half asleep. But Reed, he didn't laugh. He didn't even smirk. He just grabbed his coat and told me we need to check it out. We went out there the next morning. It was cold. Leftover patches of snow and in the woods. A damp smell from a small overnight rain. The man walked us behind his property, pointing towards the trees where he said he saw whatever it was. There were visible drag marks, long ones. The kind you won't get from a coyote kill. The kind you don't get from a person for sure. Reed crouched down and was running his fingers along the torn-up duff. He didn't say a word. That's how I knew something was off. That man always had an opinion, even if you didn't want to hear it. But that morning, he didn't say a word. We followed those drag marks about 40 yards into the timber before they disappeared. No prints we could make sense of. There was no blood and no goat. A few saplings were snapped at shoulder height. We looked around maybe 20 minutes before Reed told me we were done there. That wasn't like him. He wasn't scared of the woods. Not even a little. On the way back, he kept checking, looking in the mirrors like he expected something to be behind us. I finally spoke up and asked him what his problem was, and he just shook his head and told me we shouldn't be out here alone. That was the first time in my entire career I felt something was wrong, like actually wrong. Not some drunk hunter. This wasn't a stray dog attack. This wasn't trespassers. Something we weren't supposed to be dealing with. I'm telling you this because this was the first warning sign, and we ignored it. Or maybe we didn't take it as serious as we should have. Either way, the thing that killed Reed didn't show up out of nowhere. It let us know it was there. We were just too stupid to understand it. I'll write more soon. You can use this if you want, but as I told you before in our previous conversation, this is going to be a long one. It doesn't really matter to me what you decide to do. At least you'll hear it if no one else does. And please do not use my full name. That's the only thing I ask. Talk to you soon. R. Second email. I'm back, buddy. And here's where things really started sliding downhill. A week after that goat incident, we got a call about a missing hunter. Not unusual for that part of Montana. People wander off, get turned around, and drainages fall into deadfall, whatever. Most of the time we find them sitting on a log, embarrassed as hell. This one was different from the start. His truck was found pulled off a Forest Service road a few miles north of the ridge. The doors were shut, the keys were still in it, but his rifle was gone. There was no signs of a struggle, no blood, nothing broken. Just gone. Truck was empty. The man's brother said he left before sunrise to check a bait site he'd been setting up for bear season. Said he wasn't the type to panic, especially get lost. He knew the area better than anyone, and that was true. He grew up in those mountains. We headed out with 2 deputies and 1 volunteer from search and rescue. It was cold, gray, and the air still had leftover snow melt bite to it. We split into 2 groups. Me and Reed went toward the creek drainage where the man usually hunted. The deputies took the ridge. About an hour into the search, Reed stopped like he hit a wall. I didn't see anything at first, so I asked him what he was looking at. He pointed ahead with 2 fingers. About 20 yards in front of us was a patch of pine needles that had been pushed aside like something heavy slid through. But it wasn't round like a body. It was longer, wider, almost like something crawled on its stomach and dragged itself. But the dirt wasn't disturbed the way a person crawling would disturb it. Just the top layer was moved. I don't have any idea, or at the time I didn't know what the hell would crawl like that. Reed didn't answer me when I asked that question. He followed the disturbance maybe 30 feet beyond before it dropped off near the creek. Right there, stuck to a broken branch about 5 feet up, was a piece of shirt sleeve. Unfortunately, the missing hunter's brother confirmed later that it matched what he'd been wearing when he left. And here, no one usually believes any of this, especially this part. I'll say it plain. There were no footprints. None. Not boots, not bare feet, no animal tracks, no drag marks, nothing past that branch. It was like the man stepped onto the bank and just vanished. Search dogs came out after that. They couldn't track anything. They acted confused, running in circles, whining. One handler said it's like the scent drops off a cliff. He wasn't wrong. Around sunset, most volunteers called it for the day. Me and Reed stayed behind, walking the tree line with flashlights. Things took a turn. We were about a quarter mile from the creek when Reed stopped again. This time I saw it immediately. A tree the width of a telephone pole had these deep scratches or scarring running down the trunk. There were 4 of them, spaced too far apart to be a bear. Not casual claw marks, not scratching. These were like something grabbed the tree to pull itself upward. I ran my hand along one groove. This was fresh, split clean. This wasn't here last week. And Reed told me after I said that, yeah, he knew. This was fresh. His voice sounded shaky, almost angry in a way, like he'd been holding something in all day long. On the way back, just before dark, we heard something move on the ridge right above us. It was something moving slow, and it wasn't a deer or an elk. It was something big enough that the ground had a faint vibration to it. I had no idea what could be that size. We turned with the lights, but the timber was just too thick. This thing didn't even run when we started shining the light in its direction. It just stopped and didn't move anymore. It was unbothered by our presence. That was the first time in my life that I felt hunted. Reed just kept telling me not to run. Don't give it a reason. We walked backwards. Reed looked sick by the time we got to the truck. He was sweating, shaking, pale. I finally asked him what he thought it was. He said one sentence that I'll never forget. I think it knows we're out here. I'll stop here. I'll send more soon. R. Email number 3. 2 days later, things went from strange to wrong. We were back on normal patrols, pretending everything was fine. That afternoon was slow. The cold air was settling in the low spots. Overcast sky. Montana gets quiet in the spring when the snow hasn't fully melted. We were checking gates and boundary lines near a section locals call Black Pine. Not an official name, just something old ranch families use. Folks tend to stay out of that area, not because of monsters, just bad terrain. There's deadfall everywhere, old mine shafts, thick timber. It's very easy to get hurt if you're not paying attention. We parked and walked a bit. I would say close to a mile in. Around 6 p.m. the woods changed. It wasn't really quiet, per se. It was just dead. There was no sound. Montana doesn't go silent for no reason. Even on storm days, you'll still hear something. I remember asking if the weather was turning. Reed shook his head. No, that's not it. We kept walking. I didn't want to admit it, but I was getting extremely nervous. When the woods lock up like that, something's wrong. Instinct wrong. A few minutes later, I smelled something, a musky, wet fur stink with a metallic edge to it. I asked Reed if he could smell it. He didn't even answer me. He just slowed down, his hand hovering near his belt. 20 steps later, he stopped. Ahead of us, a tree was leaning at a bad angle, like something had hit it hard. It wasn't broken, it was just shoved over. The ground around it was torn in a half circle, like something braced itself and just pushed. I don't know what in the hell could do that. And Reed said not what, but who. Before I could ask any more questions, we heard a grunting sound. It was short, deep, and heavy. This wasn't a bear, I can tell you that. This did not come from the vocal cords of any animal I've ever encountered, and it came from behind that leaning tree. Then something dragged against the ground, a slow, low, scraping pull. Then it went quiet. Again, Reed whispered, like he did in the previous time, "Back up," and I mean slow. We did, about 10 feet, then another 10. As soon as we turned toward the direction of the truck, something exhaled behind us. One low, slow, long breath. It was watching us, whatever was out there. You could feel it, strong. We got to the truck quickly. Reed didn't start it right away. He sat there, gripping onto the steering wheel. His eyes was locked on that timber. He said we need to report this, and I didn't know to who we could report it and say what. That the forest growled at us. He wasn't joking. He was pissed. We drove back without talking. That night, I slept maybe an hour at the most. The next morning, things got worse. R. Email number 4. I'm back, Reels. The next morning, Reed showed up to the station looking like he hadn't slept a minute. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaws were clenched, his shirt was half tucked like he got dressed in the dark. He didn't say good morning, didn't touch his coffee, didn't speak to anyone. He just looked at me and said we need to go back. My question was why. He didn't answer. He just grabbed his radio and walked to the truck. We drove back toward Black Pine. Cold air, same as before. Reed kept tapping his fingers on the wheel. Not a rhythm, just nerves leaking out of him. I said, "What do you think we're going to find?" And again he said, "Not what." Where? None of this made sense to me. I thought he was losing his mind. We weren't 10 minutes into the trees when I saw the boot tracks. They were fresh. One pair, headed toward the creek drainage. Who the hell is out here? And Reed just said, "Him." And I assumed he was speaking of the missing hunter. He'd been gone for 3 days. He kept walking. We followed the prints deeper into the woods. At first they were normal, then the spacing changed. Longer strides. They were running. Then they just stopped, right there in the needles, as clear as day. Nothing after that. No backtracking, no sidestepping, no slide, just gone. I didn't understand. And before I could even ask, something cracked in the trees to our right. We turned, and there was nothing there. Another crack immediately from behind us. Another to the left. Not circling, just moving. I told him, whatever this is, it's followed us. And his response was, it didn't follow. It never left. He crouched down, looking at the dirt where the tracks ended. He wasn't studying it, he already knew. He was calculating something. I could see it in his face. If it comes at us, do not run. That's what it wants. That's what he told me. I still had no idea at the time what he was talking about. 5 seconds later, I finally got an answer and finally understood what was happening. The timber ahead shifted, and it wasn't the wind, it was something big moving through. Then this thing stepped out of the trees. It was extremely tall, its shoulders were wide and hunched. It had long arms, its chest was super broad, its fur was dark. It had its head hanging down low. The eyes looked like it remembered us, like it knew us personally. Reed raised his hand, signaling me to stay. It lowered itself a few inches, a predator posture. A deep exhale rolled out of it. It was wet, rotten, cold-smelling breath. It stepped forward, just testing the distance. Reed stepped back slowly. That proved to be a mistake. The creature rumbled, a low growl that vibrated the air. He said, back up and don't turn. We moved slow. Then it happened. 1 second Reed was beside me, the next he was yanked upward so fast his radio snapped off his belt. There was no roar, no scream. Not at first, anyway. They hit the ground together. I turned, I saw Reed on his back. The creature was crouched over top of him, one arm pinning his chest to the ground. The other was gripping his shoulder. He screamed my name. I hear it every night of my life. I froze up. I hate that part. I froze up. The creature looked at me not like prey, more like a decision. Then it just dragged him into the trees. It wasn't fast or frantic. It just took him. This is hard for me. I'll continue when I can. R. Email number 5. I didn't read over my last email before doing this, so I'll try my best to pick up exactly where I left off. After this thing took Reed, I didn't run. I didn't try to fight it. I didn't even move. I just stood there like a coward while the thing crouched over him. I don't know how long this lasted. It might have been 3 seconds. It might have been 20 or 30. My brain was not working properly. Everything in me was shutting down. Now you think you know what you'll do in a situation like that, but I can promise you don't. Nothing can prepare you for seeing something that isn't supposed to be real. Reed did stop yelling. The creature stopped moving. Everything went still. It did turn its head toward me, like an animal checking its surroundings. And it was also like it was making sure that I understood something, like it wanted me to know this was a choice it had made. It did something that makes me sick to my stomach even now. It pulled him away. This thing dragged him off like he weighed a few pounds, nothing more. It didn't even do it over its shoulder. Not held in its arms, it just grabbed him by the upper body and pulled him back into the trees. I stood there until I couldn't see either one of them anymore. Then I just collapsed to the ground. There was no time at this moment. I stayed there long enough the woods went quiet again, long enough for me to hate myself more than I ever have. When I finally got my legs working, I grabbed Reed's radio off the ground where it had fallen. I tried calling out, but my voice was shaking so bad I couldn't even keep a steady breath. I told dispatch we had a critical situation. I didn't say what happened. I didn't say who was hurt. I just told them to send everyone, sheriff, fire, EMS, whoever they had. I knew better than to tell them the truth over the radio. When help finally arrived, I was still standing in that same spot. I must have looked insane. Covered in dirt, shaking all over, barely speaking. 2 deputies had to hold my arms because my knees kept buckling. They asked me where Reed was. I pointed toward the trees, and that's all I could do. They didn't find him that day. Not the next day. Not the week after. They found some of his gear, torn vest, broken flashlight, the strap from his backpack. But not him. Officially, they listed it as missing, presumed deceased. Unofficially, they treated me like the problem. Right after the search was called off, my supervisor pulled me into his truck and told me very calmly and matter of fact, "You're going to write this up as an animal attack." And I just said, "What animal?" He stared at me for a long time. Didn't blink, didn't look away. "It doesn't matter what. Just write it up clean. Broken terrain, thick brush, surprise encounter. The rest of the details, leave it out." I tried to argue, tried to say there was no bear, tried to say the tracks didn't match, tried to say the thing we saw wasn't. He cut me off and raised his hand like he was tired of listening. "If you put anything else on that report, your job is gone, and you'll be answering questions you don't want to answer. Do you understand?" He didn't threaten me, he didn't scream, he didn't act scared, he acted rehearsed, like he'd done this before. I realized then this wasn't some strange one-time thing. Whatever we saw, whatever killed Reed, wasn't new to them. So I wrote the report. I followed my orders. I wrote possible bear encounter, heavy brush, poor visibility. I kept my mouth shut. And that decision has followed me for 34 years and led me to this point. Here's the part I never told anyone. No family, no co-workers, not even the counselor they forced me to see after this happened. When I went back to the station to clean my gear, I found Reed's notebook sitting on his desk. He kept a small spiral pad for tracking calls, gate checks, stuff like that. The last page had 3 lines on it. "Heavy breathing. This isn't a bear, no matter what they say. And it's always watching us." The time written next to it was from the night before. He knew. He knew before I did. He could feel it. And none of that mattered when it grabbed him. I'm going to stop here for now. I'm getting tired of typing, and this part is one that's hard for me to get through. Next time I'll tell you what happened when the state guys showed up and why I quit my job before the year was over. Email number 6. I'll get right into it. 2 days after the search was officially suspended, a blacked-out Suburban rolled into the ranger station. No plates. Tinted windows. No one announced they were coming. They just showed up. 2 men stepped out. Not military, not cops, not Forest Service. There was no patches, no insignias, no names. Plain clothing. But the kind of plain clothing that say government without saying it. Everybody at the station just went silent. These weren't the kind of guys you ask questions. One of them, the older one, pulled the supervisor aside. They talked in his office for about 10 minutes. The door was shut, but their voices carried through the vents. I caught a few lines. "We need this incident file." "He saw it. You coached him, right?" Then the part that made my stomach twist in knots. If he diverts from the statement, we'll handle it. Handle it. That was the phrase that hit me. What did he mean? I think I know, but it's something that shouldn't be happening. We all know that. Handle it. Get rid of me, I assume. These guys were not messing about. After that meeting, my supervisor came out looking white, but trying to look normal. He called me into his office and shut the door behind me. He said they want to talk to you. I asked who they were. He said just go in there and stick to the report. You'll be fine. The younger one sat across from me. The older one stood behind me, arms crossed, staring like he was waiting for me to screw up. The younger one pulled out a folder, my report, placed it on the table. He tapped his finger on the first page. This is all accurate? I told him yeah, and before I could blink, he asked me. Nothing unusual. No large animal with atypical gait. No human-shaped silhouette. Nothing tall. Nothing bipedal. He said it like he was reading off options from a list. My heart dropped. They weren't guessing. They knew exactly what we saw out there. I said the same thing I'd been coached to say. Limited visibility. Likely a bear. He stared at me for a long time, long enough that I started sweating. He leaned back and nodded like he'd expected that answer. The older one finally spoke. His voice was flat, zero emotion. Whatever you think you saw, you didn't. If you ever decide otherwise, you'll be giving statements somewhere a lot less comfortable than this station. I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice not to crack or what I may say. Before they left, the younger one said something that still creeps me out. Stay out of Sector 12. We don't want a repeat incident. Sector 12 isn't on any visitor map. Wasn't part of our normal patrol routes. Most rangers didn't even know it had a name. I only knew it because Reed once told me. Stay out of the corner of the valley. People disappear there all the time. They got back in their Suburban and were gone. No signatures, no paperwork, no follow-ups. The station felt different after that. Quiet, in the wrong kind of way. Everyone kept their heads down and no one talked about Reed. They tried to pretend like he didn't exist. This bothered me. Obviously. About a week later, my supervisor told me to take a mandatory leave to clear my head. I knew what that meant. They thought that I might talk. But the truth is, I didn't need convincing. I was already done. I turned in my badge and left before the month was over. Didn't say goodbye to most of them. I was sickened by their behavior. I stayed in Montana for a while, but I couldn't stand the woods anymore. Every time I heard something snap in the brush, every time a branch cracked, every time the wind moved through the trees, I felt that same pressure in my chest. The same feeling I had when that thing looked at me instead of killing me. I moved south a few years later. Started over. New job, new life. I never went hunting again. And I didn't talk about what happened. Not once. For more than 30 years. But I'm talking now because I'm old. I'm tired. And there's not much left they can do to me now. The truth is more important. The next part I'll tell you what I've learned since then. The pattern I didn't recognize until years later. And why I'm convinced the government isn't just covering this up. They are managing it. Stay safe. R. Email number 7. I didn't plan on sending another part this soon, but once you open this box, it doesn't close again. So I'm just going to keep going. After I quit the job and moved south, I tried to pretend none of this happened. I didn't talk about it. Didn't write about it. Didn't even think about Montana unless something forced me to. But here's the thing. Once you've seen it, Like that. The world never looks normal again. Every news article about a missing hiker just is different. Every bear attack with no bear tracks makes your stomach twist, because you know. Every unexplained disappearance in a national forest feels personal. And over the years I noticed something. There was a pattern to this. A pattern that lined up exactly with what those two men at the station hinted at. That they weren't just covering this up. Not only did they know about it, but they were controlling, managing this situation. Let me walk you through what I mean. Now, I lived in Colorado for a bit in the early 2000s. Same thing there. Certain sections of the forest would randomly close down for trail repairs or controlled burns, even though no actual work was being done. A ranger I got friendly with told me off the record, "We don't close trails for people. We close them for things we don't want people stumbling into." He never explained it. He didn't have to. I already knew. In 2008, a man in Wyoming posted online about something that attacked his camp. It wasn't dogs, it wasn't a bear, as they all say. He described it almost exactly as I remember the thing that took Reed. Within a week, the post disappeared. His account was deleted. Then a new account popped up pretending to be him saying, "Sorry, I was drunk and made that up for a joke." That wasn't him. Anyone could tell. Same year, his local paper ran a short article about large canine tracks near where he camped. The article got removed as well. The alphabet agencies show up when they shouldn't. I'm not going to name the park because his family still lives there. But back in 2012, a search and rescue guy told me something that made my blood turn to ice. They were looking for a missing teenager. The FBI showed up, then some wildlife consultants, then a team in full camo with no unit patches, no local plates, nothing identifiable. He told me, why would the FBI care about a lost kid who probably twisted an ankle and got turned around? He also told me they always show up when something tears a tent open, never for regular search cases. That was the same year another ranger quietly told a reporter that something big is in the back country. The comment was scrubbed within 24 hours. Remember how the two men told me to stay away from Sector 12? Well, over the years I've talked to people, hunters, trackers, SAR volunteers, retired rangers, and 4 different people in 3 different states mentioned restricted regions also called Sector 12. That's not a coincidence. That's a system. All meaning the government isn't reacting to isolated incidents. They've mapped these things out. They track movement. They track migration. And yes, there's migration patterns. They track attacks. And when one shows up in a new zone, they seal it off, officially or unofficially, and deal with it however they deal with it. Nobody outside their circle knows exactly what deal with it means. I don't think I want to know. Every single station I've ever visited, Montana, Idaho, Colorado, Tennessee, northern Georgia, even freaking Pennsylvania, has had a bulletin board with the same kinds of warnings. Do not engage injured wildlife. Report unusual scat to supervisor immediately. Unverified sightings in Area 4 proceed with caution. None of that is standard protocol. You know what is standard? Posting reminders about fishing licenses, warnings about black bear activity, trail maps, not coded language for there's something in the woods we haven't identified and don't want to put a name to it. It took 20 years for me to say the truth out loud, even to myself, but it finally clicked in 2011. I read about another ranger dying on duty in Idaho. Official reports said fatal encounter with aggressive wildlife. but a guy who worked with him leaked one line online before his post got taken down. It wasn't wildlife. We saw the same thing you did. That's the precise moment I knew what I'd seen with Reed wasn't a 1-in-a-million freak event. There's more of them, a lot more. And these agencies aren't trying to wipe them out. They're trying to keep the public from realizing what shares the woods with us. The next part, I'll tell you exactly what I found in Reed's old case file when I finally got the courage to request partial access through FOIA. They denied most of it, but they accidentally sent one page they weren't supposed to. And that one page confirmed everything that I feared, including the fact that Reed was not the first ranger taken in that valley, and he wasn't the last either. Talk to you soon. R. Email number 8. If you don't know, and most people may not, when you file an FOIA request, you expect two things. They'll drag their feet. They'll black out everything worth reading. Both happened. I wasn't surprised. But I was surprised by what slipped through. They sent me a thin packet, 12 pages, most of it useless. Stuff like weather logs, terrain assessments, and 2 pages that were so heavily redacted they looked like black construction paper. But near the back, stuck between 2 unrelated memos, was a single sheet they clearly didn't mean to include. It wasn't a statement or a report, not even an official form. It was a typed summary, and it was titled Incident 12, Pine Ridge Region. Internal notes, unverified. Unverified my ass. They always use that word when they mean, we know exactly what happened, but we're not going to admit it. Here's the part that punched me right in the face. Recent disappearance consistent with prior events recorded in 1973, 1984, and 1989. First problem, none of those incidents were public. I checked every archive I could find, newspapers, ranger logs, search and rescue databases. Nothing. 3 disappearances, all in the same place Reed went missing, and no one outside that agency ever heard a word. Common factors: nighttime activity, auditory warnings, upper canopy movement, bipedal pursuit, high-intensity strength markers. I stopped breathing when I read that line. Nighttime activity, exactly like the night Reed and I first heard it. Auditory warnings, that breathing, the huffing, the sound that followed us. Upper canopy movement, meaning those things can climb, and I assume pretty fast. Bipedal pursuit, not an animal charge, a tracked chase on 2 legs. High-intensity strength markers, that's government speak for something tore a grown man apart. They weren't describing a bear. They weren't describing a mountain lion. They were describing what took Reed. They've known for decades. It's what most call dogman. The line here changed everything. At the bottom of the page, almost like the person typing it added it out of frustration. Recommended expanded containment protocol. Local personnel uninformed by design. Uninformed by design. Meaning my supervisor wasn't protecting me. He wasn't trying to calm things down. He wasn't trying to preserve a reputation. He was following orders. Orders that said keep them clueless so they don't panic or talk. And Reed, he was unlucky. He wasn't the first. He wasn't a tragic one-off. He was part of a pattern stretching back, at least, to the 70s. After the initial shock wore off, I realized something else. That wasn't a field report. It was official documentation. It wasn't official documentation. It was internal communication between people way above us, People coordinating whatever the hell containment protocol means. You don't use the word containment unless you're dealing with something that can't be relocated and won't stay put on its own. This wasn't wildlife management. This was hazard control. Like hazardous materials like radiation zones. Like something that can't be exterminated, only avoided. I started to understand what those two men at the station were really doing. They weren't cleaning up after an anomaly. They were maintaining a border, a quiet perimeter around whatever lives in Sector 12. I didn't stop there. I couldn't. I was too deep. I reached out to 3 former rangers from other states, guys who left the job early just like I did. 2 of them never responded. 1 eventually agreed to talk, but only in person. When we met, he already knew who I was and what happened in Montana. I didn't tell him a thing. He told me. They keep them contained as long as they can, but every few years one gets past the line. I asked him what line. He said they don't build fences, they build dead zones. Zones where trails are closed, hunting is restricted, logging permits get denied, camping is prohibited, search and rescue avoids sending teams. Not because of conservation, not because of fire risk, but because something dangerous lives there and the government would rather pretend it doesn't exist than to admit it. I asked him why they don't just eliminate these things. He just shook his head. You can't kill what you can't catch. The next part, I'll tell you the final piece. The part that convinced me this isn't just containment. It's monitoring. Meaning they don't just know these things are out there. They even track them. And I'll tell you how I found out they've been doing that since before I was even born. Be careful how and who you share this with. I don't want to see anything happen to anyone. R. Alright, Reels. If you're ready, this is the part I've been putting off. Not because it's unbelievable, honestly. After what I've already told you, this is the least unbelievable piece of the puzzle. What makes this hard is that once you hear it, the whole picture changes. It stops being about what I saw that night or what happened to Reed. It becomes way bigger than that. So let me just say it clearly. After I found that Incident 12 summary, I filed a second FOIA request. Narrower this time. I asked specifically for historical missing persons from Pine Ridge, wildlife anomalies, restricted zone authorizations, and anything referencing Sector 12 by name. Most of it came back redacted or no documents found. But one sheet, just one, slipped through again. This time it wasn't a summary, it wasn't typed, it wasn't even official. It was a photocopy of a handwritten map. Old paper, logbook paper, probably from the 70s or 80s. Across the top, in faded ink, known movement, corridors. 2 patterns observed. 2 patterns. Not random sightings, not unpredictable events, not isolated. Patterns. That means tracking. And next to the title, a note scribbled in the margin. Keep out of main file. Supervisor review only. Which means someone wasn't supposed to file it, but kept it anyway. The first thing I noticed was that the map didn't just cover Pine Ridge. It extended southeast by several miles through Black Pine Hollows, through the canyons, and farther still, then up north, then west. By the time I understood the scale of this, I was sick. The boundaries covered half the damn valley, 2 logging roads, a decommissioned fire tower route, and the entire region they kept calling Sector 12. This wasn't where sightings happened. This was where the things traveled, and someone had marked it by hand over years. Different ink colors, different handwriting, different line thickness, meaning multiple people kept this record for decades. The map had two distinct types of marks: red dotted lines, primary route, straight direct corridors moving between deep forest pockets like a predator following old game trails; blue looping lines, secondary route, seasonal, more erratic, covering higher elevation zones, circling back, repeating areas every few years. Someone had written next to the blue loops: matches disappearances, 73, 84, 89, and 03. Those dates were not random. Each one was a missing person case I'd heard whispers about. Cases no one ever connected because officially they didn't happen. One note was written in red pen: observe prints in snow, bipedal, no matching species, and that was underlined twice. The second note was even worse: tag number 14 moved outside unexpected region, may indicate breeding pair. Tag? Tag what? You don't tag an animal unless you've caught it, you've studied it, you're tracking its movements. Let that sink in. Someone somewhere tagged at least 14 of these things, which means the government isn't following them. They have physical contact with them. That's not containment. That's not suppression. That's monitoring. Long-term, ongoing monitoring. I wasn't going to bother anyone with this map. I didn't think anyone would confirm it. But I ended up finding a retired ranger from Idaho who worked search and rescue in the late 90s. We met in a diner, middle of nowhere, neutral ground. I didn't bring up the creature, I didn't mention Reed. I just asked if he'd ever seen movement, corridor maps. He froze. His exact words: "You shouldn't have one of those." I asked why. He said because those maps aren't made by biologists. They're made by incident teams. I asked what incident teams meant. Not us, not law enforcement, different branch. No name tags. People you don't want to mess with. I asked if they were tracking animals. He laughed. Not a real laugh, more like he couldn't believe I was even asking. Animals don't change direction to avoid trail cameras. I didn't eat the rest of my food. I didn't take a drink. I just sat there looking at the table, understanding exactly what he meant by that. Before we parted ways, he told me one last thing. And it's the sentence that finally made me start typing these emails after 30 years of silence. If you saw one in daylight, it wasn't a random encounter. It was out of its mapped zone. Mapped zone. Meaning the government has known exactly where these things stay unless one breaks pattern. Just like Reed's did. Just like the note said. Tag number 14 moved outside expected region. Which explains why those men came to our station. Why they pressured my supervisor. Why they pushed the fake bear attack narrative. Why they closed down search efforts early. Because whatever took Reed wasn't supposed to be there. They weren't covering up one death, they were covering up a breach. And a breach means their containment isn't perfect. Their tracking isn't sufficient. And sometimes these things wander somewhere new, where normal people can stumble into them. Next time I will tell you the thing that forced me to finally accept all of this wasn't over. The thing that happened in 2019 that let me know one of them found me again. I moved states twice, changed jobs, changed routines, stayed away from the woods. It didn't matter. They always know their own. Now this part, to a regular person that doesn't have much information, this would make me sound paranoid. The truth is, for a long time, I was paranoid. But paranoia doesn't explain what happened to me in 2019. Nothing else does. I'll start at the beginning. By 2019, I had built a quiet, boring life. Different state, different job, no woods, no hiking, no camping. Closest I ever got to nature was mowing my yard. I thought I'd outrun those memories, outrun the nightmares, outrun that look the creature gave me that day it dragged Reed into the trees. For almost 30 years, nothing strange happened. No knocks at the window, no strange tracks. No more of that heavy breathing in the dark. Just a normal life. Until one night, in late October. I came home from work around 9. It was a long day. My knees were hurting. But when I walked into the house, something was off. The smell hit me almost immediately. That same rotten, wet dirt, old fur smell. The exact smell I remembered from that creature when it crouched over Reed. It's a very unique, awful smell that you can't forget. I was hoping, trying to tell myself something died under the house. A raccoon, a possum, something small, maybe some type of rodent. But the smell wasn't coming from the vents or the floor. It was coming from the back patio. So I stepped outside. I wish to God I hadn't. I had an old metal wind chime hanging by the back door. Hardly ever moved unless there was a real wind. That night the air was dead still, not a breeze, but the wind chime was swaying, slow, back and forth, like someone had just touched it. I froze, not because of the movement, but because of the sound it made. Deep, metallic, long vibrations. The exact same pitch Reed's dropped radio made the second before the creature hit. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds listening, trying to calm my breathing, trying to convince myself it was nothing. Then I saw the shape. My backyard backed up to the trees, not deep woods, but a small strip of trees before the neighbor's property. On the far right side, half hidden behind a tree, something was standing there. Tall, shoulders high, head angled forward, not moving, just standing there, watching. I blinked. It was still there. I stepped back toward the door and the wind chime stopped moving completely in an instant, like the air just froze around it. The shape never moved. It didn't turn. But I knew, in my bones, that this thing knew me. The way it stood there wasn't random. It wasn't wandering. It wasn't lost. It was waiting. Just like the one that watched us from the ridge in Montana. Just like the one that stepped between the trees. Just like the one that took Reed. Same posture, same height, same outline. The only difference was this one wasn't hunting. It was checking. Like someone revisiting a scar they left behind. I backed into the house and locked the door. I didn't call police. I knew better. I didn't get a weapon. It won't help. I didn't look out the window again. I've seen enough. All I did was sit on the floor with my back against the wall trying to breathe. After half an hour, I looked again. It was gone. But I haven't said this out loud until now, but the next morning, I checked out on the patio. The wind chime was then broken, not snapped or cut, but it was bent, like something huge wrapped its hand around it and squeezed. In the dirt under it were marks, just these deep impressions like something heavy stood there on the edge of the concrete. Except they weren't foot-shaped, they were toe-shaped. 3 large front impressions, one smaller off to the side. Not human, not bear, not canine. This was something else. Something I've seen before. Now this dogman did not scratch on the house. It didn't knock on the doors or windows. It didn't try to get inside. It just stood there watching. And if that were the end of it, I'd maybe convince myself it was just my imagination. From some of the things I've lived through, it wasn't really there. Except 2 days later, I got mail in my box with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded once, typed, old typewriter font. It said, "Do not engage. Movement detected outside containment region. Report any further activity anonymously. S12. S12. Sector 12. The exact words from the men who showed up after Reed died. That's when I realized 3 things. They're still monitoring these things, and they're still monitoring me. And whatever came by to my backyard was one of the tagged ones. They knew where it was, what time it was there, and who lived there. Hell, they could have sent the thing there for all I know. Nothing would surprise me at this point. I'm going to stop here for now. In the next one, I'll tell you what finally convinced me to leave that house, sell half my belongings, and move across the state. The night something walked across my roof at 3 a.m. And it was way too smart to be an animal. R. Email 11. Alright, this is the part that makes me feel like it goes too far. It's hard to believe, I know, but this sounds too story-like for most. I don't even care. I'm telling it exactly the way it happened. If you don't believe it, that's your problem. If anyone thinks this is fake, that's fine. They didn't go through what I've been through. After the backyard sighting, I barely slept for about 2 months. Every noise would make me shoot up. Sit up. Every creak in the house felt like footsteps. Every time my dog barked at nothing, I felt that old Montana fear crawl back up my spine. I tried to convince myself I imagined that silhouette. I tried to blame the wind for the bent chime. I tried to write off the Sector 12 letter as a prank. Deep down, I knew better. Something had found me again, and it wasn't finished. My house back then was a single-story house. Cheap shingles, thin plywood. One small attic space, nothing thick enough to handle much weight. If a raccoon walked on it, you'd hear a soft scrabbling. If a cat jumped, you'd hear a thump. So at 3:08 a.m. on a Wednesday, when the first heavy steps hit the roof, the whole house was shaking. It was like something with a lot of weight put its full foot down above my bedroom. It wasn't subtle. It wasn't guessing where I was. This thing was walking. Step, pause, step, pause. Very measured, very slow. Like it knew exactly where I was under that ceiling. My first thought wasn't break-in. It wasn't animal. It was the same thought I had the night Reed died. It's here. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't move. I just listened. 3 more steps. Right over my head. Directly above the bed. Then it stopped. No sounds at all. It went dead still. Like it was listening for me to breathe or to move. I had one of those pull-down attic hatches in the hallway, the kind with flimsy wooden panels and a cheap hinge. If you pushed hard enough, the whole thing would pop right out. While I lay there trying not to panic, I heard it. I heard it creak. Just the attic hatch bending like something pressed down on it from above. Slow pressure. Then another sound. 2 soft taps. More like a knuckle or a joint tapping. Almost like it was checking if the wood would hold. I felt every hair on my arms go up. Something smart does that. Not something wild or curious. Something highly intelligent. I grabbed my phone, not to call 911. Believe it or not, calling the police never even crossed my mind. What were they going to do? Most likely they knew about this, or they would call those people again. They wouldn't come fast enough anyway, even if they did believe me. And even if they did, they wouldn't be ready for what they'd find. So I did what any terrified man does when he's alone. I opened the voice recording app on my phone. Not because I wanted proof, but because honestly, those would be the last sounds I ever heard. But the moment I hit record, the steps started again, this time moving toward the back of the house. A long scraping slide, like it set down on the roof's edge. I didn't look outside, I just couldn't bring myself to do it. After about 20 seconds of nothing but silence, I heard it exhale. It was deep enough that the bedroom window shook. It's the same sound I've heard in the forest before, more than once. I will never forget that sound as long as I'm alive. And then, just like that, nothing. No running away, no jumping down, no more steps. It's like it dissolved into the night. When the sun came up, I went outside, and I had to hold the door frame. I was shaking so bad. I looked at the roof, expecting shingles to be ripped off, broken plywood, something, anything. There was nothing, except for one thing, a single handprint in the dust above my bedroom window. Not a full human hand, it was much bigger, longer, the wrong joint spacing, more like a hand that was for both gripping and tearing. 3 long fingers, 1 offset thumb, and a space at the bottom like a second, smaller thumb pad. This wasn't anything I knew, but I recognized the shape. It's the same shape I saw in the dirt on the ridge in 1990. The same shape in the snow around the missing hunters on that map. The same shape those men from Sector 12 knew all too well. I packed 3 bags. Clothes, documents, whatever I could shove in without thinking. I left the house that very morning. Didn't even lock the door. I drove 5 hours to a different town and slept in a Walmart parking lot. The next day I sold the house at a loss. Didn't go back for anything I left behind. I realized something. I wasn't dealing with an animal. I wasn't dealing with a monster. I was dealing with something that remembers, recognizes, travels, learns, and doesn't forget faces. The thing that took Reed found me again 30 years later. Not to kill me, not to chase me, just to remind me, I know where you are. In the next part, I'll tell you the last thing that pushed me over the edge, the thing that let me know this wasn't all random. The phone call I got 2 weeks later from a number I didn't recognize, a voice that whispered, "Stop moving, it follows patterns," and then the line just went dead. I'll be in touch. R. 2 weeks after that thing walked across my roof, I'd already moved twice. I didn't tell anyone where I went, didn't update forwarding addresses, didn't keep the same routine 2 days in a row. I thought if I stayed unpredictable, I'd stay safe. Turns out, that's not the case. Not a normal hour for anyone to call me at 2:14 a.m. It wasn't a number I recognized, no area code that I knew. The caller ID just said unknown. Usually I don't answer calls like that, especially not after everything that's happened. But I'd been on edge for weeks, barely sleeping, checking windows every few hours. So when the phone rang, I just picked it up on instinct. I didn't even say hello. I didn't say a word. I just listened. There was a long silence, long enough that I thought maybe it was dead air. Then I heard a man's voice, low, barely above a whisper. "Stop moving." Just like that. No greeting, no introduction, no hesitation. Then 5 seconds of silence. I finally asked, "Who is this?" The man ignored the question. He spoke again, the same whisper, same calm tone. "It follows patterns." My hand went completely numb. I remember my fingers slipping a little on the phone. I asked again, "Who is this?" He exhaled. Not tired, just resigned. Then he said, "You won't lose it by running. You're walking the same line it's already mapped." I felt sick. That wording, mapped, was the same word that former Idaho Ranger used when he talked about the corridors. Before I could respond, he said one more thing. "If you change patterns, it loses interest. If you panic, that makes it worse." The line went dead. There was no click, just dead. I sat there in the dark, the phone still against my ear, listening to nothing. I can't explain this part well. I didn't recognize the voice exactly. It wasn't someone I'd met. But the tone, the rhythm, the way he spoke. It was the same kind of voice those two men from the Suburban used back in 1990. It was professional, flat, cold, emotionless. The voice of someone who's told this same warning to other people before. The voice of someone who deals with these things. Someone who knows more than he's allowed to say. I didn't go back to sleep. I didn't sit down. I didn't pace. I didn't make coffee. I just stood there in the middle of that rental house thinking about what patterns mean. Then something clicked. I hadn't really been unpredictable. Sure, I changed houses, changed highways, changed hotels, but the roads I drove, the time I left in the mornings, the places I stopped for food, same patterns, same habits, same loops. Humans always think they're unpredictable, but we're creatures of habit. It's instinct. The predators, they follow habits better than we do, especially predators that get tracked by the government. At first I thought that call was a lifeline, some insider trying to help me. But the more I pondered on it, the more I realized he wasn't helping me live. He was helping them contain the situation. If I kept running and panicking, I'd drag that creature through towns, gas stations, residential areas, places where regular people might run into it. If I settled down and kept a stable routine, it could anticipate me, monitor me, keep the risk of other people getting hurt to a minimum. Whatever these things are, the people behind Sector 12 do not want them wandering off the mapped corridors again, especially not the one that has a history with a former ranger who survived an encounter that he should not have. There was something else about that call, something that made me question a lot. When he said you're walking the same line it's already mapped, he didn't just mean the creature recognized my habits. He meant they recognized them. The only way a stranger could have known that I moved twice, taken the same roads, and was unknowingly recreating the same travel pattern, as if someone was watching me, or tracking my location, or monitoring my phone. Which means the call wasn't just a warning from some insider with a conscience. It was a controlled communication, a message, a correction. I didn't tell you the part of what he said right before the call ended. Right before the line went dead, he whispered one other thing. It remembers you. Stay inside the mapped zones. Mapped zones. Zones. Plural, not just Montana, meaning this thing or things like it don't belong to one state, one hotspot. They belong to regions, and somehow, without realizing it, I'd stepped into another one. I'll email you again later. Something else that I need to say is I realized this wasn't about running anymore or hiding or avoiding certain areas. It was about being watched, the same as those creatures are, because the next event wasn't the creature. It was a man in a white truck parked across from my job every day for 3 weeks straight. He never got out, never talked to me, never even turned the engine off, but he damn sure watched me for 3 weeks. R. Email 13. Now that phone call shook me. But I still tried to tell myself I was overreacting. I was safe. I didn't want to believe someone was tracking me. I didn't want to believe that the creature, or whatever group manages these things, had any reason to keep tabs on me. But the universe doesn't care what you want, because 2 days after that call, the man in the white truck showed up. And once he did, everything finally went into place. I'd just finished my shift. Same building every day, same little parking lot. I walked out with my lunch bag, trying to enjoy the quiet moment before heading home. That's when I saw it. A plain white pickup truck parked across the street. Not new, not old, no logos, no plates on the front. The rear plate was covered with mud. Convenient. The windows were dark, but not tinted. They were just dusty. At first, I didn't really pay much attention. It didn't seem strange. People parked there all the time, until I realized the engine was running, and the man inside never looked away from me. This is what made my stomach flip-flop. He wasn't trying to hide. He wasn't pretending to be on his phone. He wasn't pretending to check a map. He wasn't acting to adjust to something on the dash. He had one hand on the wheel, and his head turned directly toward me. This guy was staring straight at me, and he never looked away even when I noticed. People think real surveillance looks like Hollywood, sneaking around, hiding behind newspapers, dark sunglasses. That's not how professionals operate. Real surveillance doesn't try to blend in. It just stares right at you, because the message isn't "we're hiding." It's "we're letting you know. We're watching." The first day I ignored it. I got in my car, backed out, and drove away like nothing was wrong. I tried not to speed. I didn't look in the mirror more than twice. Didn't let myself think about the Sector 12 letter. Didn't let myself think about the phone call. I just told myself, coincidence. Wrong place, wrong time. And for one night I almost believed it. But the next day he was back. Same spot, same time, same truck. The only difference, the truck was facing the opposite direction, meaning he'd repositioned the vehicle to watch my side of the lot better. That's not coincidence. That's escalation. And that's when I stopped pretending. I pulled into the lot at 7:15 a.m. That's earlier than usual, and the white truck was already sitting there. His engine was off, the cab was dark. Driver was inside, motionless. He wasn't watching the building, he wasn't watching the road. He was watching my parking spot. He knew which one I used. He knew my routine and my hours. Someone had told him. Or he'd been following me longer than I realized. When I got out of my car, he didn't even acknowledge me. Didn't wave, didn't nod. He just sat there with both hands on the wheel like he'd been carved out of stone. On day 10, another detail changed. The truck had a sticker on the back window. Tiny white square, barely noticeable unless you were close, but I recognized it instantly. It was the same marking the Suburban team had on their folders in 1990. A small white square with a black diagonal slash. No words, no unit number, just that symbol. The exact same one stamped on the corner of the Incident 12 summary page. My whole body went numb, because that meant two things for me. These weren't random people. They were the same branch that handled Reed's case. The 21st day, he didn't pull into his usual spot. He didn't sit far away. Didn't idle like a statue. He parked right in front of my job's entrance. The window was cracked. The driver was finally visible. He was an older man, gray beard, baseball cap, sunglasses even though it was cloudy. He didn't wave me over, he just tilted his head slightly, the universal gesture for "get in, we need to talk." I didn't get in. You couldn't have paid me to get in that truck. I stood there 20 feet away waiting to see what he'd do. He let out a long breath, frustrated, same kind of annoyed sigh the man on the phone had. Then he said, his voice calm and flat, "If you keep relocating, you're going to make this worse for yourself." I didn't even reply. He continued on. "You're outside the wrong corridor again. That's why it found you." I couldn't feel my face or my fingers. Meaning the creature on my roof wasn't the first time I'd crossed into the wrong area, just the first time I'd realized it. He told me if you return to predictable patterns, it loses interest. If you keep running, it will keep following you. The same message as the phone call, same tone, same warning. Then he just pulled away without saying anything else. One rule I've learned in life: when two different people from the same shadowy branch of government tell you the same thing, It's not a suggestion. It's an instruction. And when they reinforce that instruction by monitoring you physically, it means they aren't protecting you, they're protecting the situation. Me running wasn't the danger. The creature following me was. So after that encounter, I realized something brutal. I wasn't being watched because I was special. I was being watched because I was a loose end. Someone who survived a breach. Someone with first-hand knowledge. Someone who saw something that I shouldn't have never seen. Someone they need to keep stable, not for me, but for containment. I'll email you again soon. Email 14. The subject line says tag number 14. I'd been in that third rental for about 5 months. Far enough from towns, close enough to civilization that I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't hear anything on my roof. I didn't hear any trucks across the street. Part of me thought maybe the warnings had worked. Maybe staying put was all they wanted from me. Then November rolled around. It was a Saturday, early, still dark. I went out back with a coffee and stood near the tree line. Not because I like the woods, I don't, but because it was the only quiet place I had. About 10 yards into the trees was a stump, a big one, old, covered in moss. But that morning there was something on top of it, a small metal plate. It was thin and weathered, bent on one corner like something strong had grabbed it once. At first I thought it was just trash. Then I saw the number stamped into it. 14. My stomach dropped so fast I almost threw up. Because that number wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't some hunter's gear tag. It was the exact number I'd seen on that old map. The exact one the government note referred to. Tag number 14 moved outside expected region. It wasn't a guess now. The creature that had walked across my roof. The one that watched me from the trees. The one that dragged Reed into the dark. Was the same one they had tagged decades ago. Not just the same kind, the exact same individual. And it had left that tag behind like a calling card. A message. Not to threaten me, not to hunt me, but to let me know it wasn't hiding anymore. And worse, whoever is monitoring it clearly knew exactly where it was, and exactly where I was. Those tags don't just fall off. They're designed to stay embedded. They have to be removed, which means one of two things happened. It ripped it out itself and tossed it where I'd find it. Someone else removed it and put it there for me to find. Neither option is very comforting. I picked it up. I shouldn't have. But fear and curiosity aren't that different when you're tired enough. It was cold, too cold, almost like it had been kept in a freezer before being placed there. That detail bothered me more than the number, because it meant the tag didn't come off in those woods. It came from somewhere else, somewhere controlled, somewhere monitored, somewhere that has access to these things up close, somewhere only government hands would be near. I threw up behind that stump. I wasn't doing it because of fear. It wasn't because that little metal square confirmed something I'd been trying not to believe for 30 years. It wasn't following me because it wanted revenge. It followed me because someone wanted it connected to me. Like I was part of its pattern, or part of their experiment. Or maybe, just maybe, I was being used to track it. I'll explain what I mean next. 2 weeks after that tag showed up, I finally saw the creature again. It wasn't in my yard or on the roof. It wasn't even near my home, but standing perfectly still behind the fence of a restricted government property, looking right at me like it had been waiting and knew that I was passing. R. Email 15. 2 weeks after the tag showed up on that stump, something happened that forced everything into place. Up until then, I kept wondering if maybe I was losing my mind. Maybe the noises, the silhouette, the rooftop steps, maybe all of it was my brain circling old trauma. That's how I survived for years after Montana. I convinced myself I had overreacted. But what I saw behind that fence was not my imagination, and there's no way I misunderstood what I saw. I'll start from the beginning. There's a service route about 12 miles outside of town. It doesn't show up on GPS. Locals use it as a shortcut to skip a 25-minute detour around the canyon. I took it because I was late getting back after picking up a second-hand dryer. Nothing strange. Midday, sun was bright. There was no fear, nothing. The road ran parallel to a tall government fence, the kind they use for wildlife research zones or old utility easements. Barbed wire, warning signs every 100 feet, authorized personnel only. I'd passed it before without thinking, but this time something caught my attention. A gap in the trees, a dirt clearing behind the fence, and movement. Not fast movement, not animal movement, standing movement. I slowed down the truck, not to look. At first I thought maybe it was a person in the woods, but then I saw that shape fully, and my whole body locked up. I knew what I was looking at. It was that same tall figure. The legs were bent in a way no human stands naturally. That same wolf head. Forward, not upright, and the shoulders were unnaturally tall. There was no fur details. It was too far away. But the outline was almost the same one I saw step out into the ridge before it took Reed. It looked like the same silhouette, the same build, the same way of standing perfectly still like its bones were made out of stone. Except this time, it was behind a government fence. Not roaming free, not stalking prey, not loose in the wild. It was confined, contained, or at least restricted, like a dangerous animal held just far enough away from civilization to keep the public calm. It turned its head, and I don't mean it heard my engine, I don't mean it sensed movement. It turned its head as if it already knew I was coming. It stepped closer only one pace, but enough for the body to break the shade. I saw on the upper left bicep something metallic. Not shiny, not new. A scarred circle like a patch of skin where something had once been attached. A tag site, maybe? The exact shape of those older government tracking units. The shape that matched the metal tag stamped with 14. This wasn't just a creature. It wasn't random. These things aren't just roaming around. This was tag 14. It was standing there behind a fence, in an area civilians weren't supposed to enter, meaning it wasn't wild, it wasn't loose. It was not the only one of its kind. It was part of something organized. These things are controlled, I'm telling you, or at least observed. Somehow, despite all the distance, all the moves, all the years, it still recognized me. I do not care how insane this sounds. I know what recognition looks like in a predator. I should have driven off, but I didn't. I killed the engine. I don't know why. Curiosity, fear, shock. Just being tired of all this. A mix of everything. The creature didn't come closer. It didn't posture or growl. It just kept staring. That same stare that it gave me the night that it walked on my roof. The same way it stared the night it dragged Reed away. The same way it stared the night I saw it in the woods behind the Montana Ridge. Then it did something I still don't understand. It just stepped backward, like it was giving me permission to leave, or like it wasn't allowed to get any closer. As it moved, I saw something else, just for a second. A small device, set into the ground behind the fence. A blinking red light. This wasn't wildlife equipment. It wasn't a camera tripod. A motion-tracking perimeter sensor. The kind the government uses when they're monitoring dangerous assets. Not containing, hunting, monitoring. The creature stayed behind it, not out of fear, not out of confusion, because it knew the boundary. It knew the limit. and it knew the rules. I put the truck into gear and left. Just this numb, heavy acceptance. The truth hit me all at once. I was never being hunted, never being chased or stalked. Not the way I thought. I was just being observed, studied, tracked, just like it was. That's why the phone calls happened. That's why the white truck watched me. That's why the government men told me to stay predictable. Because when I moved out of pattern, so did this thing. Which means the two of us were connected somehow. Not spiritually, not some kind of magic, but because of a single fact. We were both survivors of the same breach. And someone somewhere wanted to keep that breach contained. Not for our safety, but for theirs. I know this has been all over the place, but I'm doing the best I can. And this is where everything starts making sense. And where the story stops being about the creature and starts being about me. Not in a self-important way, not in a chosen one way, just in the harsh, ugly truth of what happens when someone sees something they're not supposed to. After the sighting behind that fence, one question ate at me. Why was I still alive? Reed wasn't. The missing hunters from 73, 84, and 89 were not. The teenager from Idaho wasn't. So why me? Why did that creature look at me twice and walk away? Why did the white truck show up for me and not for the others? Why was I warned, not silenced? The answer showed up 3 days later, and I'm going to tell it exactly the way it happened. A man knocked, without knocking. It was 11:40 a.m., bright day. I was eating a microwave meal pretending my life was normal when the air in the room just kind of got sucked out. That feeling when someone stands behind you before you turn around. That heavy sense that the space isn't empty anymore. I felt that, very strong. Except the door never opened. When I finally turned toward the hallway, a man was already standing there. Same kind of guy as the white truck driver. Same posture, same dull expression. The same don't ask questions presence. But this one wasn't pretending to hide. He walked into the kitchen like he owned the place. He sat down across from me and told me, "It should have taken you that day." Not hello, not an introduction, just that sentence. He didn't explain who he was, he explained what I was. I didn't talk. He continued, "You weren't targeted. You were collateral. Wrong place, wrong time. Simple as that." He tapped the table like he was giving me time to absorb the words. "It doesn't leave loose ends." Then why didn't it kill me? He didn't even blink or show any emotion. He just said, "Because you followed the instructions." I didn't understand. I hadn't been given instructions in that forest, at least none that made sense to me. But he clarified, "You didn't run." That hit me like a punch, because Reed did run. One wrong step backward, and the creature reacted instantly. Apparently freezing saved my life. Hopefully that may help someone else. He must have seen the confusion on my face because he leaned in and said, "When you don't behave like prey, it doesn't treat you like prey." Then he added, "We've known that for years." He slid something across the table, a thin folder. Inside was a grainy photo, old at least from the 70s. A body, a man. He was half torn apart. This wasn't a bear or a cougar kill. This was something else, something a lot stronger. Under the photo was a handwritten note. Observed subject reacted only to retreat behavior. Static subjects ignored. Subject, not creature, not animal. Subject, meaning it was being studied, evaluated, even back then. He waited for me to finish reading, then told me it doesn't kill out of hunger, it kills out of instinct. And sometimes pleasure. I asked, instinct for what? To maintain dominance. You weren't challenging it. Your partner was. Because the picture, this wasn't just research. It was proof they'd been testing this for decades. The worst part was the real reason I was alive. I finally asked the question that had been eating at me. Why warn me? Why follow me? Why let me live? He looked at me for a long time. Because once it recognizes you, it remembers you. And once it remembers you, you become part of the data. This meaning the creature remembered me. They knew it remembered me. They wanted to see how it behaved around me. They wanted to track both of us. Not for safety, for their research. I wasn't a survivor. I wasn't lucky. I was a variable, a living marker, a moving beacon that Tag 14 responded to. They didn't warn me to protect me. They warned me to keep the experiment alive and stable. If I ran too much, it would follow. If I stayed predictable, it lost interest. Not because the creature cared, because they cared. Because I was the only witness from the 1990 breach who survived. The man stood up and said one last thing before leaving. There are no survivors. There are only outliers. And outliers get monitored. Then he walked out the front door. No threats, no promises. Just that. Email 17. Its subject line. The last thing I'll ever say about this. This will be the last email I send you. It's not because I'm scared or anything new happened. It's because I think the creature is still out there watching and waiting for me. It's because I'm done with all of this. 34 years is long enough. What I told you, every part, every memory, every detail, that's everything. There's no hidden twist, no secret files I'm holding back, no heroic ending I'm saving for later. It's just the truth, as I know and remember it. Now I need to tell you the part I didn't understand until that man walked out of my kitchen. I wasn't supposed to survive Montana, and the only reason I did is because I didn't run. That's it. That's the whole difference between me and Reed, between me and the others who vanished. I froze, it backed off, and the people behind Sector 12 saw value in that. I wasn't a witness, a victim, a survivor. I was a variable, something they could watch, something the creature recognized, something that helped them track its patterns and behaviors. That's why I was warned. That's why I was monitored. That's why they let me keep breathing. Not because they cared about my life, but because my existence fit into whatever system they built around Tag 14. I didn't matter as a person, I mattered as data. And once that hit me, I mean really hit me, something in me broke. I stopped running. I stopped jumping from place to place. I stopped living like I was one step away from being dragged into the trees. I'm old now, too old to spend the rest of my life afraid of something that already took 30 years from me. If that thing ever wants me again, it knows where I am. If those agencies want to keep an eye on the outlier, they know where I am too. Either way, I'm done being the scared kid on the ridge. I'm done trying to outrun something I don't understand. I wrote all of this down for one reason alone, so someone else knows, someone who listens, someone who actually gives a damn. And you seem like that kind of person. You're not like the ones chasing fame or trying to scare people for fun. You don't treat this stuff like entertainment. You talk like a real human being, and that's why I chose to send this to you. But before you decide what to do with it, there's something I need to say, plain and simple. If you share this, you could be stepping into something heavy, something bigger than monsters in the woods, something bigger than Dogman, something that watches back. I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because no one ever told me. You're a grown man. You make your own choices. Just understand, if you read this on your channel, if you open this box up in front of thousands of people, you're putting yourself on a path that cannot be undone. People in those agencies pay attention. Creatures like Tag 14 pay attention in their own way. It could be dangerous, or it could be important. I honestly don't know anymore, so I'm leaving it in your hands. Tell it if you think the world needs to hear it. Burn it if you think it's safer that way. Either choice is yours, but whatever you do, do it with your eyes fully open. R.